Good evening, my name is Wayne Sinclair and I call the regular September 27th meeting of the Administrative Appeals Board to order. Board Secretary, please conduct a roll call.
Board Member King,
Here.
Board Member Parker,
Here.
Vice Chair Panessa,
Here.
and Chair Sinclair.
Here,
Board members present.
our first item is the acceptance of today's agenda. The board can discuss and may amend the order of the agenda. I would like to entertain a motion and a second for the acceptance of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Oh, you're taking up, sorry, I always do that.
Chair Panessa, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Panessa,
Aye.
Board Member Parker,
Aye.
Board Member King,
Aye.
and Chair Sinclair.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Yeah, and the next item is public comment. Time has been set aside for members of the public to address the board on items of general interest with regard to subject matter jurisdiction of the board. 3 minutes will be allotted to each speaker. Only the board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act. The board generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Testimony for the hearings will only be taken at the time of the hearing. Board Secretary, please begin the comment period.
I do not have any registered speakers.
And we'll move into the first item is item number 4. Concerns the property at 766 East Spencer. It is an appeal of the $5,000 fine and a $10,000 fine, an administrative decision by Kay Johnson, Aaron Boydia, and Paul Fisher is permanently eligible to operate a vacation rental in the city of Palm Springs. Board Secretary, please ensure that city staff and the appellant understand their testimony is under oath.
You do have signed affidavits from city staff and appellant in person. Anyone on Zoom who desires to testify under this appeal hearing, under the laws of perjury, if you choose to speak, you hereby accept and acknowledge that your testimony shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You may begin.
As we begin, I'd like the board and the city, well, you'll do yours in a second. And Abe, would you please introduce yourself and what your function is?
Deputy City Attorney Abe Sanchez. I advise the Administrative Appeals Board.
Next, young lady.
Oh, we're doing introductions?
Yes, we
now?
are.
That's fantastic. My name's Jocelyn Kane. I am a member.
My name is Mike Panessa. I'm a vice chair. My name is David Parker, board member.
And I've introduced myself. Cassie, would you tell them who you are?
I'm Cassandra Edney, and I'm the deputy city clerk, the staff liaison, board secretary.
Thank you. Staff, please present your report. Oh, my mouth is tonight.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, board members, city staff, and public joining us this evening. My name is Patrick Clifford with the Department of Special Program Compliance, and we oversee the vacation rental program here in the city of Palm Springs. Before you this evening is a staff report relating to the property located at 766 East Spencer Drive. It was found that this property is advertised and operated as a vacation rental with 2 violation dates, the first occurring on December 11th, 2022, and the second violation in June 22nd, 2023. The elements that led to the issuance of the citation are listed in the staff reports. Additionally, the code officer who investigated the property is here to provide further testimony of what led to the issuance of the citation. Ultimately, it was found that the property was in violation and 2 citations have been issued. The first citation was citation AB 0439, issued in the amount of $5,000 to the property owners for the property located at 766 East Spencer Drive. And a second citation was issued, AB 0535, in the amount of $10,000 to this property owners for the same property. At this time, I would ask that the issuing officer come up to provide further testimony, and Officer Whittaker is here to present further testimony. Thank you.
Officer Whittaker, please state your name and present your report.
Sure. Good evening,
Members of the board, my fellow city staff, and members of the public present for tonight's hearing, my name is Jason Whitaker. I'm a code compliance officer for the city of Palm Springs. I'll begin with citation AB 0439. On Sunday, December 11th, 2022, while conducting a review of available rental listings on the web-based booking platform Airbnb.com, I came across an advertisement in the Racket Club Estates neighborhood of Palm Springs titled Mid-Century Modern Palm Springs Social House, which can be found as attachment 5 in the staff report. While reviewing the advertisement, it stated that the entire 5-bedroom home was being offered for up to 10 guests. I was unable to find a city ID number on the advertisement as required for a registered vacation rental property, so I reviewed the photos contained within the ad and was able to positively identify the property address as 766 East Spencer Drive. Upon review of the city's vacation rental registration records, I confirmed that the property identified did not hold a vacation rental registration certificate. I then sent a message via the Airbnb.com contact host feature, which can be found in attachment number 7, inquiring about a 3-night stay arriving Friday, January 20th, 2023, and departing on Monday, January 23rd, 2023. My message stated, "Hi there, beautiful home, looking to book for a birthday weekend getaway from LA from January 20th through the 22nd. Just wanted to know if the kitchen has pots and pans if we decide to stay in and cook, thank you." One of the co-hosts, Aaron, responded to my inquiry with the following unique response. "Hi Wayne, yes, the kitchen has pots and pans." After receiving this message, I responded, "Thank you for confirming." Additionally, a notification appeared with the following message, "Ready to book. James lets guests book instantly," along with a book now icon. I then researched the guest reviews that were contained within the ad, which can be found under attachment number 5 of the staff report. Between June 2021 and July of 2022, there were 6 reviews where the guest specifically mentioned short-term weekend stays.
What meeting is that?
It's one I'm gonna drop.
Is it live?
There were also 2 guest reviews who specifically referenced the Palm Springs short-term vacation rental ordinance pertaining to no outdoor music. This clearly demonstrates that the owners and operators of this property have direct knowledge of the requirements to operate a short-term vacation rental in the city. As a result of my findings contained within the advertisement, the unique response to my inquiry, as well as the invitation to book for a 3-night stay, I found that the property located at 766 East Spencer Drive was in violation of PSMC section 5.25.040A, operating a vacation rental without a vacation rental registration certificate, and issued administrative citation number AB 0439 to the property owner entitled Casey Johnson. And then I have another for the other citation. This is for citation AB 0535. On Thursday, June 22nd, 2023, while conducting a review of available rental listings on the web-based booking platform Airbnb.com, I again came across the same ad for the property located at 766 East Spencer Drive with the same title, Mid-Century Modern Palm Springs Social House, which can be found as attachment 5 of the staff report. When I reviewed this advertisement, I had recognized it as the property at 766 East Spencer Drive, in which I previously issued administrative citation AB 0439 to the property owner on title on December 11, 2022. While reviewing the advertisement, it stated that the entire 5-bedroom was still being offered for up to 10 guests with a minimum night stay of 2 nights, which can be found under attachment 6, page 110 of the staff report. Upon review of the city's vacation rental registration records, I again confirmed that the property identified did not hold a vacation rental registration certificate. I then sent a message via the Airbnb.com contact host feature, which can be found in attachment number 7, page 118 of the staff report, inquiring about a 3-night stay arriving Friday, July 7th, 2023, and departing on Monday, July 10th, 2023. My message stated, "Hi there, we are looking to book for a weekend getaway. Wanted to see if you allow an early check-in. A few of us will be arriving at separate times, thanks." One of the co-hosts, James, responded to my inquiry with the following unique response. "Hey Wayne, yes, we allow early check-in. Hope you decide to book with us. It's an amazing place." After receiving this message, I received an invitation to book for the requested dates of July 7th through 10th of 2023, which can be found under attachment number 7, pages 118 and 119 of the staff report. I again looked at the guest reviews for this property, which can be found under attachment number 6, pages 99 through 103, for the time frame between July 22nd, 2022, through July 2023, and discovered 6 guest reviews in that time span that all mentioned short-term stays, and another 4 that referenced the outdoor music ordinance. It should be noted that this property is still being advertised on Airbnb and has current reviews as of September 2023, although not indicative of a short-term stay, along with the same co-host and host, James and Ken. As a result of my findings contained within the advertisement, the unique response to my inquiry, as well as the host invitation to book for a 3-night stay, I found that the property located at 766 East Spencer Drive was in violation of PSMC 5.25.040A, operating a vacation rental without a vacation rental registration certificate. And I issued a second violation to the property owner entitled Casey Johnson, Aaron Bedoya, and Paul Fisher. That will conclude my testimony, and I'm available to answer any questions. If you have any, I'll pass it over to Patrick.
And thank you, Officer Whitaker. Just further information that this property did apply for vacation rental certificates. At that time, though, the paperwork was incomplete and was returned back to the representative that came into the office. So a lot of times our applications are returned by mail, and then it's a checklist that's provided back via mail what's missing. This representative, I believe, came into the office and turned in an application and was given back to this person with items that were identified as missing, such as signatures and a couple of compliance forms.
What was the date of that?
I don't have the date of when that occurred, because I had no record of us saving it as far as receiving it. It was just a walk-in. However, that application never was returned as completed. So I don't know what happened after that, but we did receive an incomplete application and just never came back for a full process. Thank you.
Are there questions of the board?
Yes.
Austin, you want to start?
So Patrick, we have what I think is the application in here. Right, and I know there's, acknowledgement in the application would say, right, until this is complete and you've had an inspection and all the things, you can't advertise it. Was that checked or signed, or was that like part of the incompletion? So there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't have any.
Yeah, and so looking at the
Initials.
application, there was a date that said the date signed, so it says June 29th, 2021. That could be the same date that the application was delivered to the office, but could vary a few days. However, there is no signature on that page, and right above the owner's signature, where they would sign, is the statement that states that anything in this application is true and correct. And I believe right above that section, section C of the application, where it says signature dates, the second bullet says you are not authorized to advertise or otherwise operate as a vacation rental until you receive specific written authorization from the DSGC, which is the Department of Special Program Compliance. Administrative fines and penalties will apply.
And that's not signed.
That's correct. This application is not signed. That's one of the reasons why it might have been returned.
Okay. And then the other question I have is around this, first violation. We typically see people appeal right away on the first violation. This kept going on, and then we ended up with the second violation. Do we send, is there like certified or something? Do we know where the violation was sent to?
I can allow Officer Whitaker to answer that question.
Yes, so we send it by certified mail as well as regular mail, and it goes to the address on title for the property owner as well as the physical address if those two addresses differ.
And do you have then like the response card or whatever the certified requires?
We do get those back. I don't recall with this particular one if I got it, the card back or not. We get a lot of mail.
Okay, the file doesn't have it in there or anything.
No,
Okay. All right. I'm done.
Michael?
So, you actually asked, questions I was gonna ask as well. So, the renewal paperwork, I just wanna make sure I understand this. The renewal paperwork was done in 2021. Somebody walked in, it was in, I'm not sorry, I said renewal, the application, sorry. Somebody walked in with that paperwork and they were just handed it back saying it's not complete. Is that correct?
Yes, from my understanding, it was a handback. I don't know if there was specific instructions like written down or typed up, said what was missing. But I do know, from my conversations with staff, that it was communicated at least what was.
Okay. Officer Whitaker, you had said that the property is still being, after 2 citations. And the communication that goes with those, it's still being advertised today. We just don't know if it's short term.
correct. The advertisement is still live as of today.
Okay. And then, as I'm scrolling through the, staff report, I saw that there was 305 reviews.
Yes, so a little history with that property before it had sold to the current owners. It was a registered vacation rental. Apparently, they kept the same advertisement. So some of those reviews are from when it was registered.
Okay, so it's not fair to assume it was rented that many times with these owners.
No, because the property, I believe, sold in 2021, and that's why when I reference in the reviews, I go back to 2021, 2022.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? David?
Thank you. Johnson took my question as well, but I do have a question, sort of an administrative question. What happens when a fine is not paid? Is there any follow-up done from the city's perspective?
Correct. So we have a contract with a citation processor called Pay the Ticket. So all of our citations that are uploaded to them, they start the collection processes for the city. First, it's really about 3 notifications that are sent to the mailing address that we have listed on the citation. And if they have no response there, then they start a collection process, which sometimes they can identify other addresses, specifically because our mail does not forward as a city, but their mail does. And so if they get a notification back or a notification that has been forwarded, they usually, I'll see in their comments or notes that they've updated the mailing address to then continue further notifications to that new address. And so they don't start the collection process. If it goes unpaid, then there's additional penalties for being late. And then they start, I think they go to a collection person that then calls and does the standard collection process. And I guess at the last worst case scenario, they'll remit it to the franchise tax board to collect with respect to the franchise receiving it from a tax processor.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll wait till you're done.
Just
Sorry.
a quick follow-up question to that. So do we have any feedback from the collection agency that they had any success in reaching the owner?
I don't have that with me now. I can easily, apologies. I don't have that with me right now. I can easily look it up. But I can, and then I can advise the board if that's, if what the status is on the
Curious,
certificate, if desired.
Go for it.
Sorry to interrupt you there. So one other question for me is typically when it's rare, but when we've had a case where there has been 2 citations or multiple citations, is the appeal for both? And are we appealing both in one hearing? Or is this appeal for one of the 2?
So we have it as appeal for both citations.
Okay,
And I think, maybe if we want to, and I can ask our city clerk if we want to break those up into 2 separate resolutions. I'm not sure. We have it as one resolution, whether if it's both the violations are in the same resolution. So.
okay.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Clifford, Mr. Whitaker, for your testimony. At this time, I would open the appeal hearing. The appellant is invited to speak for up to 10 minutes. Any members of the public who desire to speak on this appeal hearing shall have up to 3 minutes to speak. If any member of the public testifies, the appellant will be invited to provide a rebuttal for up to 2 additional minutes.
I believe the appellant is on Zoom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, let me see if I can turn camera. Hi, this is Aaron Bodia, one of the property owners. I just wanted to make a couple comments and then ask a question. So just in response to some of the things you guys have said, in regards to the first violation, I didn't receive a notice. The other property owners did not receive a notice. That's why there was no response to the first notice. I can't remember if we put that in the notice to appeal or not, but that was the reason for that. I personally get a lot of mail and have had mail stolen from my personal mailbox more than once in the last year, as well as my neighbors. I'm not saying if that's the issue or what happened, but we definitely would have responded had we received it right away. But I think the overall comment we want to make is that this was an honest mistake. As far as we knew, we had the permit this whole time through Josh Ashley. He's a local Palm Springs or Coachella Valley resident who's lived there for many years and he works as a property manager. And he assured us that we had the permit in place in 2021. We gave him all the documents, IDs, signed everything when everything came back. He was actually managing the property prior to us purchasing it. And when we first acquired it, we assumed we could take over the previous owner's permit. And that we found out that wasn't the case. So that's why we reapplied. And we have text messages and communications with him, kind of verifying that everything was taken care of. We were very hands-off throughout the whole process. And so we kind of put all our trust into him. And as soon as this whole issue came up, we haven't been able to get a hold of him. You know, he's kind of just fell off the map, disappeared. So I don't know what's going on with that or the excuses behind that, but that's kind of where we're coming from. We never intended to, you know, fly under the radar or do anything that's, you know, not to board. That's why we applied for the application in the first place. So I guess that might just finish by asking, is this whole process about being punitive, or is there some kind of opportunity where the board is kind of understanding that mistakes occur and, you know, second chances are given?
I guess I can answer that. The ordinance is very, very tight, and the answer to your question is no. We have no leeway at all in these situations. Anything further?
Not for me. Anyone else?
Hi board, this is Paul Fisher. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm one of the owners of this property, and I just want to ask, do you guys know Josh Ashley? Because he's
No, it doesn't matter if we don't know him, whether we do or don't.
because I'm just thinking, because if we had an issue at the property, you know, the inspector found this property. Could I ask that inspector a question? When you were researching the Airbnb, did you see Josh Ashley as a co-host? Inspector, I believe it's Whittaker.
Yeah,
Hang on, he's not, someone's coming up.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mitch Tabb. I'm a code supervisor that oversees the vacation rental enforcement program. So after the first, and this will get to to answer the question that the appellant is asking, but after the first citation that was issued in December of 2022, one of my officers was investigating and saw that the advertisement was still up in January, and I did notice that Josh Ashley was listed as one of the co-hosts. I recognize the name as being the previous property manager for when that property was a registered vacation rental. At that point, I did give them a call. I gave Josh a call and spoke with them and said, hey, I verified kind of the address that we have on file, which the citation was sent to. I believe it was sent to Casey, Casey's address as a Hollywood address. And that was what was listed on title. So I had that conversation, essentially saying, hey, are you aware that this property does not currently hold a registration certificate? And at that point, I think he had stated that he needed to do some follow-up. He was going to check in with our office staff to kind of reconcile that. So I believe that conversation took place the end of February, the beginning of March. And we had another citation packet that we had put together that we ended up holding off on to allow them the opportunity to kind of reconcile the information. At that point, I communicated to him the information related to the citation that Officer Whitaker had issued in December. So yes, that there was communication made with somebody that was associated with that ad that appeared to be facilitating these rentals.
Thanks, officer. Anything more?
I'm just confused how he never communicated that to us. I mean, we work, we have open communication with him up until the point where we got this second violation. And now, we're kind of being penalized for this. Obviously, look, we want to be good neighbors. We want to respect the rules. We want other people to respect the rules. We want the same, we don't want our neighbors to have loud parties. We don't want our property to have a loud party. That's why we've always, enforced our rules very strictly. And as you can see from the reviews, that some of the reviews are stating that the rules are very strict, and that's for that reason. So we followed the guidelines throughout this process of renting this property. So I have a disconnect at why, if we could be allowed another chance, because we, in good faith, we've always tried to follow the rules and have our vacation rental permit. And we trusted someone that works very closely with the city, that has multiple vacation rentals. That's actually in the LA Times at another violation that he was taking care of, that he showed up early and ended up evicting the guest. So a lot of the inspectors know him. A lot of Palm Springs community knows him. This seems like, if we could be allowed another chance, we've always tried to be good neighbors and do the right thing with the permit.
Anything further?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to your last response, saying that you have no.
You have 1 minute of your time left.
Okay. You said you have no leeway. Can I just ask, what's the purpose of these appeals if you have zero leeway?
You'll have to ask the city council that.
I guess the one thing would be, if our appeal is denied, what's our next steps to fight this?
Yeah, thank you for the question. If, depending on the outcome of this appeal, if it is upheld in the city's favor, you have the right to appeal that decision to the Superior Court.
Anything further?
I mean, the other thing too is if you guys need our contact information, the address is obviously wrong. That's the wrong address, and obviously the mail has been missed. I mean, we're gladly, we don't need a collection company trying to chase us around. We're here to work with you guys, and we're totally caught off guard by this, and it's very upsetting, so but in the end, we're not trying to dodge this. We want to work with you guys. We want to be good neighbors. We want to see if there's anything we can do to be allowed to operate this business in the city again.
Not a business.
Or
Chair Sinclair, I would just clarify for the record that the board has the authority under the ordinance to hear appeals and determine whether or not a violation occurred. that's the purpose of the appeal, and your comments with respect to not having leeway are, could you clarify that it's just in reference to when you do determine that there has a violation, you do not have the authority to waive penalties
Right.
or fines?
Or give second chances.
Yes.
Questions from the board?
I'll just start by, I don't know exactly who I'm talking to, but, did any of your group, are you aware that there's something, right, called a transit occupancy tax? Transient, it's called a TOT, a tax that, comes to the city when you have an actual vacation rental certificate. Do you guys have any sense that you've ever paid that tax?
Ma'am, truthfully, we put our, Josh was our guide in this process. He stated to us when we were interviewing him to manage a vacation rental that he would take care of everything. And everything he asked for, we provided to him, all the application, the insurance, the contact for the inspection. We even paid him the money for the application fee.
Right, so, all right, not to cut you off, but this is a tiny bit like giving your son the keys to your car and hoping that they do the right thing. You're responsible for your property, and while you have someone who suggests that they will be doing all the things, they don't own the property. So this is the place we're coming from. So I think I'll let my colleague continue.
Michael?
So we have in front of us in the city's report, a copy of the application that was at least dated on its signature, June 29th, 2001. The copies we have are redacted, whose name is on them. Can you tell us who filled out the application?
Sorry, did you say 2001 or 2021?
I'm sorry, 2021. Yeah, sorry, but that was my mistake.
If I recall, this application was docu-signed by Josh to us.
Clarify that, please. Like, which one of you then docu-signed it?
I believe Josh docu-signed it to us, but I see.
Like on one of the forms, I can only see the last letter of a name as an N. So I don't know if that's Casey Johnson, or I don't know what Joshua's last name is, but if that was Casey that was signing it. Actually, it wasn't signed. The name is printed in there, but it's redacted. So I guess I'm trying to get a sense for who filled out the application.
The application was filled out by Josh, and it was signed by us, but it's interesting you have a unsigned one, because I believe I have a signed copy that when I got the DocuSign receipt, it was signed.
It's, yeah, from what we're seeing, there are there's a name filled out where it says owner's name, but the signature line is blank. Okay, so thank you. And you said that the city has the wrong address, but you got the second notice, which is what started the appeal?
Right, the city has the wrong address, but most of the address is correct. So, I mean, maybe my partners want to comment on this.
Yeah, I think so. What we have is called a virtual mailbox. We never actually go there to pick it up. They scan our mail, and Paul and I actually we use the same service for different businesses. We each have a different, like, I'd call it a PO box unit or whatever. We also have one for this business. And so what happens sometimes is that they put the wrong unit or PO box or whatever you want to call it, and it never gets to either one of us. Sometimes they are savvy enough to identify the name on it and link us that way. That's what I'm assuming happened, because I believe it came into my virtual mailbox, but it had the wrong unit number on it. So I was surprised it even got to me, but I'm assuming, this is just an assumption, that they were able to match my name and having an account with them. That's just the most logical explanation I can think of.
So is that the 4470 Sunset Boulevard, box number 107 address?
It's the Sunset Boulevard. I'm not sure offhand if that's the right box number, though. I can look it up though and see.
Well, it's suite 107, and then there's a box after that. So it's like suites 107 and then PMB post office box 96308, which is mine. But if there's no post office box mentioned after that, sometimes it just gets lost, you know. But for some reason they noticed the name on there and they put it in the correct post office box this time. But the address on the violation is incorrect.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Well, I just have a follow-up on this note, just for the sake of clarity. Patrick, does the application have that like less than full address? Is that where that came from? Because it came from somewhere.
Right, so first I just want to say that the application that was received in your packet, that was provided by the accountant, that's not from the city. I did not have a copy of the application that was given back. So
Oh,
that application is from their appeal submission to the city.
oh, so they have this and we don't even know why.
Correct.
Okay,
The address that we use for mailing is just simply from title, because we don't have contact information from a non-registered vacation rental. So if it's a typo with respect to how Riverside County put it onto the record, then that's a typo from Riverside County. But our code officers will reference title and mail it to, certified, they'll mail to the address on title, and then we send a copy to the vacation rental. And we don't certify that copy to the vacation rental because we don't want them returned back. The only time we would see those ones returned back is if they had a forwarding address on their vacation rental or any other message that would say, do not leave it here. So a copy goes to the vacation rental uncertified, and a certified goes to the mailing address that is on the title with respect to the second.
I see. Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, that adds, I think, a lot of clarity. So this incomplete application was provided by the appellants as part of their appeal.
Right. And
So
that,
they know,
Patrick, if I, or Michael, if I could just interject, in, the third attachment, it has the evidently came from them. The three names are listed and it says a signature line, and then they printed it is Kenneth Carlson.
so this is from them, they're providing this,
Yes.
so.
Yes, but this is actually an incomplete application. We have a complete one. I'm looking for it right now. That was
So, but you provided us with this one, so we're looking at the one you provided. And that's, yeah, we can see that it's incomplete. Like most of the pages are not where there's supposed to be a signature, they're not signed. There's the one that lists all the different various kind of highlights of the rules, that's not signed.
I think the question is, Michael, why didn't they submit, if they had a signed one,
Yeah,
why wasn't that submitted?
is this a clerical error right now?
Yeah, from my end, I know I've sent PDFs to multiple people, and for some reason, whatever program I'm using, signatures, or they'll say the whole thing is blank. For some reason, when I'm looking at my end, it shows it's filled out. So to me, that sounds like a technical issue, but I'm not sure otherwise.
I can submit the application for what we have for the board to review it.
No, we don't need that at this point. Anything further? David, do you have questions?
I do, just one follow-up question. I think in section 3 of your appeal application, whoever filled it out mentioned, and I'm quoting here, that you were provided explicit confirmation by Mr. Ashley that the permit had been received. And you guys did a great job of giving us text messages. and stuff to follow, and it's a good trail, but there's nothing in those text messages where he says, I've received the permit. I see you guys saying that he sort of, you were waiting for him to respond, but nothing that he says he received the permit.
Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that was in a text message. Was that in person between the two of you or on the phone or something?
Josh was very adamant that there is no renting until the permit, that we have the permit. And so after the application submitted, he said the permit is good to go and we can rent it as a short-term rental.
So that was after the back and forth in the text about the pool certification, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. Just one follow-up. I think Officer Whitaker said that the property is still being advertised. Who's advertising that? Who's carrying that ad?
That's a great question. I wanted to comment on that too. The property is not being advertised as a short-term rental. I encourage officers to check the calendar and attempt to even try to book it as a short-term rental. It's not being advertised as a short-term rental. It's actually, I believe all the dates are blocked right now. The Airbnb may be up still, but it's not being advertised and the calendar is blocked.
Any further, David?
I don't have any further. Thank you.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Testimony's over.
Oh.
I wanted to follow up on Jocelyn's. You have no record of them having ever paid TOT on any of the rentals.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to provide further comment on that. So if the appellant stated that they themselves have not collected and remitted transient occupancy tax, then I would safely assume that none has been collected. Josh Ashley is not a registered agency in the city that has the own respective TOT permit to collect and remit tax to the city. And so sometimes we will see property managers do that on behalf of a property owner, but it's still filed on behalf of the property owner. So with that respect, it leads me to say that no transient occupancy tax has been received unless it has been under a different tax permit. But Josh actually is not an agency of the city that has a permit to collect and remit on behalf of others.
Thank you, Mr. Clifford. Okay, we're at the point where we open it for board discussion. Maybe we have discussion from the board. We'd like to start.
All right, I'll start. It's always very frustrating when somebody hires, and I'm basing this on what they're telling us. Somebody hires a property manager that, you know, I guess we don't know if he knows what he's doing, doesn't know what he's doing, whatever. We don't understand. It's not up to us to decide his competence. But we do know that for the ordinance, the owner is responsible. I'm struggling with the claim that there's so many clerical errors. I mean, form's not signed, address is wrong. It just seems like the perfect storm of errors. It's just, I'm struggling with that as a justification for this. Where they, you know, didn't get the first one, but they got the second one. And there's just something missing here for me. It seems like, to me, if I have a property manager that's not responding, I'm gonna move heaven and earth to figure out what's going on. I mean, they own the property, and to not understand what's going on, that's their responsibility as the owners.
Thank you. Jocelyn, any comments?
I would second the idea that you can put your trust in someone if you want to, but the consequences of whether they do what they are supposed to do or don't are on you as the property owners. And we've had a lot of cases here where, you know, people put their trust in people that they probably ought not to, and then lose control, basically, and unfortunately, the consequences are the consequences in this case, and I would agree with my colleague that lots of technical errors, lots of issues around your digital mail, I don't even know, that there should be hands-on on a piece of property that's worth probably the kind of money that it is, and the nightly, charges that are listed on all these, advertisements are quite high, so, I would just say, that this one isn't that complicated for me, even if there's a lot of miscommunication, so.
David,
Nothing really concrete to add, other than I share the frustration that you both have talked about, and then the appellant putting trust in an agent that probably didn't do them justice. I also think there's certainly, I think we've all said that's a responsibility to follow up and ensure that the permit has been received on behalf of the owner. It just doesn't seem that that was maybe carried out as effectively as possible.
and of course, there's been, in order to have an Airbnb ad for short-term rentals, a registration certificate number is required on the site, and there isn't one. And that's another red flag. So may I have a motion? Are we ready to have a motion from
Can I say
someone?
one thing,
No,
we agree
no,
with
you may
you.
not. No, you may not. We're in board discussion time. Go ahead, any motions?
I move that we uphold the fine and the suspension.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Chair Sinclair, I would just, because this involves two fines, I would just clarify that in the motion.
Both. Thank you.
Board Secretary, would you call the roll?
Board Member Parker,
Aye.
Vice Chair Vanessa,
Aye.
Board Member Kane,
I with the caveat that the motion is ineligibility, not a suspension. This is two fines and permanent ineligibility,
Right.
correct? I wanna
Yes.
be really clear on that.
Yes, it is.
so yeah, in the recommendation, it says permanent and eligibility to.
Okay, that's not what came out of his mouth, so I just wanna be sure
Thank you for the.
that we're clear,
I
and
stand
my
corrected.
vote is aye.
And Chair Sinclair,
Aye.
motion carries 4-0 to adopt resolution upholding.
Okay, the city will be in contact with the appellants and that the appeal has been denied. And we'll move on to the next hearing. I can bring it up here. The next item is item 5 concerning the property of 2700 Lawrence Crosley Road, number 70. An appeal of a $5,000 fine and administrative decision that Lightspeed Investments are permanently ineligible to operate a vacation rental in the city of Palm Springs. Board Secretary, please ensure the city staff may understand their testimony is under oath.
We do have signed affidavits from city staff and the appellant is in person. Anyone on Zoom who desires to testify under this appeal hearing, under the laws of perjury, if you choose to speak, you hereby accept and acknowledge that your testimony shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You may begin.
Mr. Clifford?
Yes, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, board members, city staff, and public joining us this evening. My name is Patrick Clifford with the Department of Special Program Compliance. We oversee the vacation rental program here in the city of Palm Springs. Before you this evening is a staff report related to the property located at 2700 Lawrence Crosley Road, number 70. It was found that this property had been advertised and operated as a short-term vacation rental from the elements that are listed in the staff report. As the violation date, April 9th, 2023. The code officer that did investigate the property is here in attendance this evening and will be able to provide further testimony on what led to the issuance of the citation. And I would like to invite Officer Whittaker to the stand to provide further testimony. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, my fellow city staff, and members present for tonight's hearing. My name is Jason Whitaker. I'm a code compliance officer with the city of Palm Springs. On Sunday, April 9th, 2023, while conducting a review of available rental listings in the city of Palm Springs on the web-based booking platform Airbnb.com, I came across an advertisement titled Spacious, Cozy one-bedroom condo, which can be found as attachment number 5 in the staff report. While reviewing the advertisement, it stated that the entire one-bedroom condo was being offered for up to 4 guests. I was unable to find a city ID number on the advertisement as required for a registered vacation rental property, so I reviewed the photos contained within the ad and was able to positively identify the property address as 2700 Lawrence Crossley Road, Unit 70. Upon review of the city's vacation rental registration records, I confirmed that the property identified did not hold a vacation rental registration certificate. I then sent a message via the Airbnb.com contact host feature, which can be found in attachment number 6 of the staff report, inquiring about a 3-night stay arriving Thursday, May 11th, 2023, and departing on Sunday, May 14th, 2023. My message stated, "Hi there, looking to book for a birthday weekend getaway from May 11th through May 14th, 2023. Just wanted to see if there's a check-in time around noon, or are you flexible? Are we allowed to use the tennis courts if we decide to play? Thanks." The host, Natalie, responded to my inquiry with the following unique response. "Hi, Wayne, you can check in at any time of the day as the cleaning crew will prepare the plates for you a day before. There are tennis courts free to play. You will have a key to the tennis courts on the keychain." After receiving this message, I responded to the host, Natalie, "Okay, cool. And the 11th through 14th are available," to which Natalie responded, "Yes, those dates are available." After not receiving any further information from her, I followed up with the host again, stating, "I tried to book it, but getting error messages," in which Natalie responded, "I checked the settings. There's supposed to be no reason for a problem booking it." Subsequently, after receiving that message from Natalie, I then received an invitation to book for a 3-night stay for the dates of May 11th through 14th of 2023, and received a final message from the host, Natalie, which stated, "I sent you a pre-approval." In addition to the invitation to book a short-term stay at this property, there was clear evidence to support the fact that this property has been used as a short-term rental. You will find under attachment number 5, page 37 of the staff report, a guest review from Jake in April 2022, who stated, quote, "We stayed at Natalie's apartment this past weekend and it was safe, clean, and absolutely incredible for a little getaway," quote unquote. A second review from April 2022 by another user, Monique, stated, quote, "I had a chance to stay at Natalie's place for the weekend and it was amazing," unquote. There was an additional guest review left by another guest, Elena, in April 2023, which was posted after I had cited the owner, thus it did not make it into the staff report. I provided a copy to the deputy city clerk prior to the start of this evening's hearing.
Yeah, we got.
This additional guest review from Elena from April 2023 stated, quote, "We stayed at Natalie's place for 5 nights and enjoyed it a lot," unquote. If you refer to the appellant's written statement, which can be found as attachment number 2 of the staff report, she stated, quote, "This place was never rented short-term, only long-term," unquote. Due to the totality of evidence, including guest reviews that are indicative of short-term stays, as well as the invitation I received to book a short-term stay at this property, this contradicts the appellant's statement. As a result of my findings contained within the advertisement, the unique response to my inquiry, as well as the host invitation to book for a 3-night stay, I found that the property located at 2700 Lawrence Crossley Road, Unit 70, was in violation of PSMC 5.25.040A, operating a vacation rental without a vacation rental registration certificate, and issued administrative citation number AB 0506 to the property owners on title, Natalie and Ted Lieberman. That will conclude my testimony. I'm available for any questions you may have, and I will pass it over to Patrick.
Thank you, Officer Whitaker. I have no further comment.
Questions from the board?
I don't have any.
Go ahead.
Sure,
Mike.
thank you, sorry. You may have said this, and I apologize if I missed it, so you found this in just your regular research of the websites, or was there a complaint?
The advertisement,
Yes,
I found it.
okay. And then, do we know, so I assume since there's a unit number, this is within an HOA,
Yes,
and do we know if that HOA even allows short-term rentals?
I believe they do.
Okay. And then, I'm not sure what page it would be. Let's see if I can even tell you an attachment number. Sorry. What's the one? It's the page. I don't want to waste everybody's time scrolling here. Where it says the entire condo hosted by Natalie. It's a horizontal page, has the calendar. It actually states under the selected dates that the minimum number of stays is 3 nights, which is what you requested, correct? Okay. And is it fair to say that you message the host and don't just go by that 3, whatever it says there, like if it said 2 nights, 4 nights, whatever, you actually message the host and get a response?
Correct. We always message the host. Because there could be, then they will say that there's an error with Airbnb with the calendar. So if we have it in writing, plus the invite to book, that shows the intent to rent short term.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. So it was rented at least a few times, short term, from what we can tell from the reviews. Was there ever TOT paid on this? I'll let you answer, sorry.
No, I would believe, no, because there's no TOT permit associated with this.
Thank you.
David?
I have no questions.
Sorry.
You took it.
I have no questions, okay, thank you. Anything else? That's it, Patrick, correct?
Correct, nothing further, Chair. Thank you.
This time I would like to open the appeal hearing. The appellant is invited.
Can I answer, because I gave you paper, I have rights to explain, right?
You will.
That's why I'm
And one
giving you
second,
an
you're about
opportunity
to,
right now.
you're about to come up.
Okay.
This time I would like to open the appeal hearing. The appellant is invited to speak for up to 10 minutes. Any member of the public who desires to speak on this appeal hearing shall have 3 minutes to speak. If any member of the public testifies, the appellant will be invited to provide an additional 2 minutes. The appellant may.
Hi, that, okay, thank you. That is not true what he says, because all Airbnb messages and texts saved forever. And what was happening, it also says how many rented, and I can show breakdown every single rent. I have no reason to rent it for 3 days. I was always renting for a long term, and it's even booked like 2 months in advance. It was rented even on summer to the doctors and nurses, which is for a smaller price before. But this year, on the 6th of April, we decided to sell it because we needed it. And real estate agent said that, well, it's booked actually up to March next year. He says, well, I have to wipe it out, kind of. So I tried to delete Airbnb completely. And what it does, all settings were wiped out because they told me, well, a website told me that in order to be able to delete all the bookings which is made up to March, I have to pay a huge amount of penalties, way more than $1,000. Because it's rented like in January and February for like almost $9,000. And to be able to remove this booking, I have to pay penalties. Very, very huge one, and I try to resolve it with Airbnb. I have a property in Palm Desert. I have a also a license, permit for short-term rental. Even there, I would never enter for 3 days. Although, it's booking there, all the time. So here I cleaned up everything. I'm trying to delete it. I cannot delete until I will pay the fees. I don't know what to do, how to pay the fees, but whatever he said, I can show right now text messages. When the booking happened and I realized it's not my property in Palm Desert, when I saw it's a property here, it was immediately deleted. And my message to him, sorry, property is not for rent. You can see right now on Airbnb website messages, because it was mistake. I can't tell exactly what it will be written. That's my signing. This place can be available for those days. The place is for sale and not rented. It were also in the process in that moment, actually from the April, it was during the remodeling, which was very, very severe remodeling. Like it was all bathroom and kitchen changed and like everything completely like renovated for sale. And in fact, in those times, lived over there those people who were fixing it for like 1.5 months. They were living there and they were fixing it at the same time. So it's like some people who did it there. So I never rented this place short term, and as you see, these dates never were rented. It was canceled and canceled immediately. And whatever he says, I can provide a text message between me and him. And it was not stated that you're welcome, like to stay, whatever it's saying here. Place cannot be available those dates. The place is for sale and not rent, and not rented. Yes. So I can also provide that on Airbnb, or like it was always booked for 30 days. It was like no point for me to do short terms more than that. I have a witness if he can speak. He's the one who paid for this property when I was buying it. And as our agreement that his family member will stay there, like his grandson with his fiance, and they would have to stay for those dates which were available. For example, it's young kids and they cannot rent anything like for Coachella, so they would go there and stay in the place for Coachella. That was agreement, and some other dates. But as I mentioned, I did not rent this time. When he said I cancel it, I can suggest you to look and through the messages, and it never was saying like you're welcome to stay and like keys and tennis courts. This is not true. But show me, this is like fact. It's a website which saves all the messages forever.
Anything else?
If you can please listen to my witness, that our agreement, confirming our agreement, his grandson stayed there for valuable days as a Coachella, but also you can see from licensed real estate agents saying that this place will sell from 6th of April. And it's on MLS. How would I rent it out if it would be on MLS? And also his, conditions were that I prepared for sell the way he wanted it to sell, because it was not sellable condition. And nobody stayed there. It's kind of possible to show also on the calendar on Airbnb that nobody stayed there in April or May, because it was totally remodeled for sale.
So,
yeah, and you have a letter from a real estate agent.
Anything else from you?
Well, for me, what I wanna say you, there is, no reason for me to do that, and I do have property in Palm Desert, which I do have license. And I'm renting for longer even time there, so, this money, which would be for 3 days, it would be absolutely like funny number. Would be no reason to even get, because cleaning would be,
You have 1 minute, any more questions?
okay, sorry, yeah, if you can please put that meeting, give it to
After,
my
after they
witness.
ask,
would be
after
good.
they ask questions, we'll get other witnesses up here.
Okay.
Questions?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have a question. Thank you for your comments. And I understand what you said about, your correspondence with the officer. How do you explain the reviews that were mentioned?
Well, I can
Because
show.
several, as I think there were several
If
examples
he,
where they
whatever
said.
he said you, that whatever he emailed with me, like, and I can show you what
So
exactly.
no, don't misunderstand me. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about what he emailed to you. But there's reviews of past renters that said they rented for a weekend.
That is not
for 3
true.
days.
Nobody ever rented for the weekend, and I can show that first of all, my like rental rate, like percentage is pretty small, and more than that, I can provide to each month, or again, from the website, who stayed and how many days they stayed. And it's booked, as I mentioned, like ahead, for all the high season, and then low season, it was the doctors staying and nurses. Yeah, so whatever he says for weekend, this is totally not true, and if he states that he should show me, otherwise I will show my Airbnb text messages and also my booking calendar.
I think is that an example?
That's the review.
That's one of the examples we're talking about. So Elena rented it in April 2022. She even mentions you by name and says it was a great place for 5 nights and she enjoyed it a lot. So that, I'm confused based on your testimony and the reviews that are in your file.
Okay, it's written here, nice spot, great location, enjoyed the pool and hot tub, lots of people in the neighborhood condos, where it says about the dates.
Look at the review above it,
Review above it,
Above it, right above the name.
highlighted in yellow.
yellow.
Yeah, so you're not talking about the bottom ones, you're
No,
saying it
the ones
about
that are
only
highlighted.
one.
It's highlighted.
Well, let's go over the calendar and see.
So,
I don't need you. to
Which
go
days is it?
I don't even-
April.
Answer that question.
April, it was already for sale.
here's the thing. This is your time to appeal, and so we have documentation, and I imagine you might have seen all of this. We can't, like, if you have things you wanna present, you should have had them prepared. This is your appeal, you knew this was coming, correct? So it was a little frustrating for us, for you to suggest that you have alternative information that we don't have, and we can't access it. What we can see is a back and forth between you and the officer. We're staring at it.
Between him and me?
Yes,
Where is it?
yes, ma'am. So
Oh,
I don't
right
know
in
how to
front of
show you. It's on our screens. I don't know.
What
Did
his
you,
name?
so, excuse me for a second. Did you see the packet that we are looking at? Did you look, not that piece of paper? There's a, I don't know how many pages of this packet. It's online related to this appeal. Have you seen that?
No, I never was informed that I can see something. But what was confusing, whatever he says, and what
I understand.
exactly you can
So
see.
take a
there's
look, because this is,
This review was from April 22. We stayed at Natalie's apartment last weekend. We scheduled for a
And
little
just for the
getaway for the
record, the
weekend.
appellants get the same email that the board members
Where's the
do, they are
weekend?
BCC
Sorry.
though, so.
It says right in
yeah,
the first
it's not-
line.
Thank
I
you.
was there this past weekend and it was safe, clean. The one below it from April 22, I stayed at Natalie's place. It was amazing. Step recommended, this is April 22. he's experienced property with, so somebody in April of 22 also rented it. And you replied, thank you, I hope you stay with, I hope you can stay with us again next year.
Okay, well, this, whatever he tried to book was not booked, it was for
We're not
sale.
talking about
Okay,
him, we're talking about these
okay,
examples that we
So,
gave you.
sorry, that's fine.
Yeah, let's just move
This
on.
is not,
This
well,
is not you.
again, so what was clear is that you were sent access to the same information we have, and you clearly haven't looked at it. So that's a problem for us.
Also,
And I
whatever-
don't know if we can address that as an issue or not.
Okay, whatever he said, it was shocking for me because I couldn't find
I
anything what he
understand.
said on my end. And he said it under oath.
Yes,
And with all
and it-
that, I
and
see
it-
totally different
And
conversation.
it's right, and it's in front of us as well. So the point, and I don't know, board, if there's a way to manage this problem where there's an information gap. Whether we give them some time to review it, or we just, move along,
Well, can I comment on that?
please.
So you received the email, a week ago about the agenda for this meeting that gave you the time and the location. And there was, packets of information in that email.
I did not receive this email. I did not receive email number one. I can show on my old emails. And also I received only letters in my mail saying that this meeting will be on 4:30. I never received anything else.
Can we move on and
To-
get to
to-
witness?
For the record, there's an email that specifies that the meeting was to start at 5:30. You replied to it and said, thank you, Cassandra, from your personal email that says 5:30, so you acknowledge that it
It
started at
says,
5:30.
it says only about Zoom. It doesn't say about that meeting will start physically in 5:30.
I forwarded you that email earlier this afternoon when we spoke.
Can I ask a question? Because I think frankly, that's a moot point. You were here on time. So my question is this. In the report that was sent to you, whether you looked at it or not, is not my question. The report that was sent to you, there is an exchange between you and the officer. The officer asks if May 11th through May 14th is available. And you replied, yes, those dates are available. If you were not planning to rent short term, why did you say, yes, those dates are available?
Because I have rental property in Palm Desert, which I have license and I rented short term. So for me, it was not red flag. This place was busy with remodeling and people were in fact moving in to live there in the end of April. And for this reason, for me, when something on my phone, it's very difficult to operate. And this way I pop up the message. They don't give you actually, if you can see, very easy, clear breakdown on Airbnb. If you have several properties, then you really will have very hard time to even assume what's happening. I can also show the fact by the dates on Airbnb that settings were completely went off after I tried to delete Airbnb for sale as my real estate agent requested. And settings went, it's 0-day minimum and 365 days maximum. My normal settings were 30 days minimum and 90 days maximum.
Okay, so based on what you're saying, it is in Airbnb, so if it defaults to 0 days minimum, so somebody changed it to 3 days minimum.
And we have it in front of us. This is what we're
The ad,
telling you.
the ad with the calendar, and it says it has a 3-day minimum. And on top of that, the officer asked for 3 days, and Natalie, which I assume is you, responded, yes, those are available. Now, whether it was, you thought it was a different property or not, is not the question. You responded that yes, it was available for a 3-day rental. The ad shows a 3-day minimum. My next question is, in the reviews, if you're saying you never rented it for less than 30 days, why are there 2 reviews for April of 2022? That's not, this is 2023.
You're not looking
On
at
the,
this.
if you look at it on your website, on your phone, there are 2 reviews for April of 2022. If you're renting it for a month, there cannot be 2 in the same month.
It cannot be stayed for all weekend, as you say, written on review that they were staying for the weekend. That doesn't make any sense.
That's exactly what I'm saying, is if your testimony under oath is that you never rented it for less than a month, but there are 2 reviews in the same month, that can't be. Those two can't be, they conflict with each other. You cannot have rented to 2 people for a month in the same month. That's what I find very confusing.
Okay, and we are saying about this year or previous year, what you
So in 2023, we have you accepting a 3-day rental. In
they
2023,
didn't
let me
say-
finish. In 2023, we have you accepting the inquiry from the officer for a 3-day rental. In 2023, we have a review that they stayed for 5 nights. In 2022, we have 2 reviews in 1 month, which means they had to have been for less than that month. However many days, we don't know. That's not the point. The point is, there was 2 rentals in April of 2022. There was a 5-night rental in April of 2023. And your intention was to accept a 3-night rental in May of 2023.
whatever you think intentions were, the fact is that never was rented, as you know, and cancellation was not only sent, but also like pay penalties for cancellation, because that's what went sequenced with the plan that we were selling the property.
Thank
Okay,
you.
and
Let's get
that's-
the other witness
yeah.
up here.
I need a blue form fill out, please.
And if you could be nice enough to remove your hat, that would be great. Sure. Fill out the form first, please, and then state your name.
Robert Kaltrakis. You want me to fill out the form or talk?
Fill out the form and then talk.
Yes, if I just might clarify what she said earlier. She's working with 4 or 5 different properties. And English is not her main language, it's Russian. And I lent her money on not only this property, but the others too. And I think the problem was she was juggling too much. And I think she got these properties confused. I tried to explain to her what she should be doing. It comes down to keys. She doesn't have keys sometimes for the right properties, for check-in. It's a whole mess. So I think a lot has to do with her understanding of she was trying to juggle too much at one time. And she got these properties confused. Now, the only thing I do is I lend her the money. She pays me interest on the money I lend her. And the other thing was that when there's a property available, my grandson and granddaughter or anybody coming up to visit can stay in those properties. So that's basically what I'm here for. Any questions?
No, I don't have any.
No, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Now we'll go to board discussion and who wants to start? I'm worn out.
Thank you, Michael. So, actually, the witness testimony, I think was helpful because I think, in his words, he acknowledged that it was more of a possible clerical issue and juggling too many properties at one time. So, irregardless, it's the owner's responsibility to follow the regulations, and the statement on the appeal does not match the evidence presented, in my mind.
Discussion, anything, Michael?
Go first.
I think that was well said, and, I also just feel the need to reiterate that. And I've said this a lot, the vacation rental ordinance in Palm Springs is very strict, it's there for a reason. If we don't uphold, way that, and the language, the letter, and the spirit of it, we are in danger of losing all of the ability to do short-term rentals in this city. And therefore, we often take a hard line on things, and it's not to be punitive, it's that we want to preserve the ability for people to come to our city. So it's unfortunate if, you know, the technology is confusing, or she was overloaded with things on her plate, but unfortunately, I don't really see any, like, other path for this, so that's what I have to say.
Michael?
So from my perspective, I think, you know, best case scenario, she was overloaded, didn't realize what property it was. Worst case scenario is, there's a credibility issue.
Yeah.
Because there was a response, we're seeing reviews. So the reviews from what we see are for that property.
Right.
And to say that there was never an intention to rent short term, it for me is not credible. That maybe on that case where the officer reached out, she was confused at what property it was. But there are reviews, and you can't write a review for a different property than where you stayed.
Yeah.
So the fact that there are 2 reviews in 1 month tells me there was an intent to rent short term. And so I think from my perspective, there was an intent, there was no permit. You know, the fact that she's telling us she has other properties that have permits, that, you know, there is an ability to work within that system, and it was not worked within in this case.
May I have a motion?
I move to uphold the fine and the inability to get a permit.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Board Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Panessa,
Aye.
Board Member Parker,
Aye.
Board Member Kane,
Aye.
and Chair Sinclair.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0 to adopt the resolution upholding the administrative decision.
The fine and the ability to rent short term have been upheld. And the city will be in touch with you with regard to the fine and payment of that. Before we move on to the next one, I need 5 minutes. Anybody else need 5 minutes?
Sure thing.
Thank you for your time.
We'll be back at 7 o'clock.
I'm not standing up because I can't.
Next on the agenda concerns the property at 2300 South Cali Palo Fierro. Is an appeal of a $2,500 and administrative decision of a 6-month suspension of vacation rental registration certificate. Board Secretary, please ensure the city staff and the appellant understand their testimony is under oath.
We do have signed affidavits from city staff. The appellant is on Zoom. Desires to testify under this appeal hearing under the laws of perjury. If you choose to speak, you hereby accept and acknowledge that your testimony shall be the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth. Go ahead.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for,
Hang
not your turn
on,
yet.
hold please,
Hold on.
hold please.
Patrick, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, board members, city staff, and public joining us this evening. My name is Patrick Clifford with the Department of Special Program Compliance, and we oversee the vacation rental program here in the city of Palm Springs. Before you this evening is a staff report for the property located at 2300 South Cali Palo Fierro in Palm Springs. The matter before you is related to the Palm Springs Municipal Code 5.2507. 070B, which explains the requirement to submit contract summaries with the city of Palm Springs. Just some background that the city registered vacation rentals here in the city of Palm Springs. Prior to each short-term occupancy, they are required to submit a contract summary to the enforcement official, which is our department, for each short-term stay. Additionally, in the background, this property is a registered vacation rental with the official start date of February 2nd, 2023. As you'll see in the staff reports, it does describe that when we initially send out the first registration certificate, it's usually a welcome email from our staff, which clearly illustrates the need to submit a contract summary with a helpful link that will direct the property owner or agency to where to go submit such contract summaries, and that is attachment 5 in your staff report. Additionally, as attachment 6 in your staff report, it was found that this property did not submit a contract summary due to an event that occurred at the vacation rental property where code compliance investigated a concern or nuisance that was called into the city, and they investigated and found that a contract summary was not submitted. The code officer that did respond to that nuisance event and the issuance of the citation is here this evening and will provide further testimony of that event, what led to the issuance of the contract summary or failure to submit contract summary citation. Additionally, in attachment 7, you'll see that there is a review of the contract summaries that's reviewed by our staff here in our department. And then with the review that is absolutely the attachment 7, and also as a screenshot in the staff reports, you can see that we confirmed that there were 0 submissions before 8/10/2023 and 5 submissions after the August 4th, 2023 event that occurred at the property. And so with the investigation from code compliance and the confirmation in the contract summary system, that's what led to the issuance of the citation AB 0566 in the amount of $2,500 to the property owner. And pursuant to Palm Springs Municipal Code 525090D, violations of failing to submit a contract summary will lead to a 6-month suspension of the vacation rental certificates. And this has been mailed out to the property owner with the information that we maintain in our vacation rental files. The effective suspension date is here to start on October 2nd, 2023, and that is in attachment 8. I would like to invite the code officer that did the investigation for this property, so he may provide further testimony in detail of what led to the investigation and the issuance of the citation. And that code officer is here this evening. I'd like to invite him. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, my fellow city staff, members of the public who support tonight's hearing. My name is Jonathan Ingram. I'm a code compliance officer for the city of Palm Springs. On August 4th, 2023, I received a vacation rental hotline call regarding loud music at the property 2300 South Calle Palo Fierro. Before responding to the call, I checked the city's records to verify the property in question was a certified vacation rental with the city of Palm Springs and had a contract summary for a short-term stay. I was able to verify the property was a registered vacation rental, but was unable to find a contract summary. I responded to the music call complaint at the property and verified with the guests staying at the property. They found the booking on Airbnb.com for the stay February the 4th of August, 2023, and checking out Sunday the 6th of August, 2023. Upon completion of the call, I returned to the office and conducted a second, more detailed search of the city's vacation rental records and was still unable to find a contract summary for this day on August 4th. As a result of my investigation and lack of a contract summary for the guest stay of August 4th, I found the property located at 2300 South Calle Palo Fierro in violation of PSMC 5.25.070H, failure to submit a contract summary, and issued out a citation AB 0566 to the property owner on title Ephraim Epstein. Thank you, and that concludes my summary.
Thank you, officer. Are there questions?
I have one. Unless go for it. So oftentimes when we have a case like this, we get like the permit application paperwork, and I didn't see it this time. But I assume, or tell me if it's safe to assume, that if they had a permit that form that where they have to initial all the different rules. One of those rules is about contract summaries, I believe.
Yes, correct, and that is not included in tonight's staff report, but if it's an incomplete application, we would return it, if it was missing signatures or initials on any of the, paperwork, so. I can't confirm that it was initial, because we don't have it in front of us, I was assuming that our staff that does overview the paperwork.
In this letter.
And then plus in the letter where they get the permit, it also highlights that.
Correct, and that's letter that is provided.
And that, yeah.
Right.
In its attachment,
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, thank you.
David, did you have a question?
I didn't, thank you.
Joshua?
I just wanted to clarify if I'm right, that the sound violation citation goes to the person who's renting this, right? Okay, so we're not talking about it today.
No, that was a cause of me verifying that
Yeah.
they did not have a contract.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, James. We'll now go into the, this time I would like to open the appeal hearing. The appellant is invited to speak for up to 10 minutes. What did I do?
No, you're fine.
Nothing, I was just releasing him
Oh.
from his chair.
Any members of the public who desire to speak on the appeal hearing shall have up to 3 minutes. If any member of the public testifies, the appellant will be invited to speak for an additional 2 minutes. So, sir, state your name, please, and go from there.
Yes, my name is Ephraim Epstein. Thank you for hearing my case, your honors, and members of the board and all others here. I am guilty of this violation. I'm of not submitting the summary to the website. I'm not contesting that. So before you, I sincerely apologize genuinely that didn't happen. I'm not appealing the fine. I've actually already paid the fine, which I paid promptly. And I realized that I should pay this fine because it was my fault, and I've obviously wasted everybody's time. This is my first year as a short-term rental host in Palm Springs, and I have been diligently paying my TOT taxes and following other rules, such as putting my license number on the postings. As a new host in Palm Springs, I misunderstood the need to go on the website and manually submit summaries with each stay, and that is once again 100% my fault. I just was not clear on that, and it is in the packet. I must have not done a good enough thorough job reading that, so I'm clearly guilty of the violation, and I have paid my fine. I just want
Here we go.
That the reason I'm before you.
Hold on, somebody is weighing in.
Okay.
You know, like,
Oh,
they don't. Oh, they do.
okay.
She's making sure everybody's muted.
Okay, no.
And-
You're good.
Bizarre, okay, sorry, proceed.
Okay, thank you. So the reason I'm before you is not asking to waive the fine. I've already paid it. I'm just asking, please, for mercy and grace, not to also suspend my license. And the reason I'm asking for this consideration is, first, the mistake was not malicious. It was my own misunderstanding on that. I have a good track record of paying my taxes. I'm a good citizen of Palm Springs. I don't have any offenses or felonies. When I did get to speak to an officer, I immediately rectified the situation, putting in the past summary, as well as I've put in all future summaries from that point forward. And this is also my first offense. I've just come out of slow season, or I guess all hosts have been coming out of slow seasons with little bookings. And now we're entering into the high season. If I were to have a 6-month suspension, it would obviously cause me like serious financial damages, and that would make it very difficult for me to cover my expenses and mortgages and things like that. So I'm not asking to waive the fine, but I am please asking for consideration to allow me to continue to operate over the next 6 months. And if you give me the opportunity, I will prove myself to be a good host going forward. That's all I have. And I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you for your time, but I would have to say the ordinance provides And we've gotten in trouble when most of us first went on the board. We are not allowed under the ordinance to do what you request. So,
Well,
we'll
I have a
Jocelyn, go
question
ahead.
when we're into the next phase of
Okay, yeah.
conversation.
Do you have any questions for the appellant?
No, I do not.
Michael, questions?
The question I was gonna ask, which I think you may have already answered, was, you filled out the application, you initialed next to whatever that field was, that contract summaries were required. And I believe on the letter that we have in front of us for the permit, it states that contract summaries, sorry, I don't wanna waste everybody's time scrolling up here. That begin submitting your contract summaries using this tool, which they provide a link for each guest state prior, which is underlying to your arrival. So you kind of already answered my question in that, so much that you did receive that information, whether you understood it or not is a different issue, but you did receive that.
Yeah, I received, if it was on the application paperwork, I must have initialed it, obviously. I did receive a welcome packet. I don't remember the email, but I'm sure it was there as well. I did look through the welcome packet, and I've done a lot of things like obviously putting the certificate number on the things. I just obviously didn't do a good thorough job on reading the submission. I didn't realize that I had to go to a website and submit it. That's my fault. I should have known that. So once again, I'm not disputing the fine. If there's any way to provide me any kind of leeway to operate through this season and not cancel all the bookings, please ask that. That's my only request.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any other questions?
No.
Jocelyn, we're ready for board discussion. Jocelyn, you had.
I had a quick.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you for your testimony, and your forthrightness. I know we all appreciate that. This is just a curiosity question. How do you handle the check-ins at this vacation rental? Do you meet them in person, or is it by PIN code, or?
Yeah, it's 100% remote. So they get, the automatic text messages and emails that kind of give them all the information, and then they get a code a few hours before their check-in. I've amended that since this, so now they don't get the code. I make them do it. I have them on Airbnb send me a picture of their license now, and I have them do the DocuSign and the Good Neighbor brochure, and then I submit the summary, and then I give them the code now. But before, I was just giving them the code. I have two other vacation rentals. I have one in Lake Arrowhead and one in Palomar Mountain in San Diego, and so it's a little more lax there on the requirements. So I've been used to operating that way previously.
Okay, one last question for you. In the same email, I think there's a section near the end of that communication that asks if you want to be signed up for e-notifications to keep informed on stakeholder meetings, newsletters, and up-to-date information relative to the short-term rental program. Are you getting those?
I'm not getting those. If I'm on the list, it could be that it's going to my spam.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, board discussion. Jocelyn, you had a point.
I frankly have a question for Patrick, maybe, or the city attorney. Is there, or maybe I should know the answer, a way to decide when the 6-month suspension should be? I feel like you answered this already, but is there leeway at all for the start and end date of the 6 months?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Great question. We have worked with past appellants with respect to when to start. And sometimes there has been some bookings that were made probably a year out, and they say, absolutely, can we extend it maybe a couple of weeks, and then have a specific date. We've worked with it to start it with respect to that. We have, I believe, with the last case that we talked about, that the suspension letter took a little longer to get out. They stopped operating a month before, And so we've worked with staff to confirm with their past guest reservations to make sure that that actually was true, that they did stop operating, and we adjusted the suspension period for that.
So you had at staff level a certain amount of discretion around this,
Within a reasonable.
according to whatever your history has been. Okay, I think that's important.
Anything else?
Are we in discussion?
Yes.
We are in discussion.
So, the tough one, I mean, he's acknowledged that it was his mistake. Unfortunately, or fortunate, whatever, we don't get to pick and choose in terms of what the penalties the city council laid out. So I don't know that there's much leeway for us.
David, any comment?
No, I just would agree with Michael's comments.
Okay.
Not a lot of leeway. Oh, sorry.
May I have a motion?
So I think I'm gonna try to make this motion, if it makes any sense, to uphold the administrative fine of $2,500 and the administrative decision of the 6-month suspension, but request that staff and the Office of Special Programs work with this appellant and facilitating some kind of 6-month period that seems most appropriate. I don't know what other words to use. So that I just wanted to be part of the motion,
Okay,
if I may.
sure. Make any motion you want.
I would advise against it. I would not say that there is clear basis in the municipal code for the appeals board to give such direction to staff. Certainly staff can consider that request. But what the municipal code allows the appeals board to do is determine whether a violation or not has occurred and hold that, not provide further guidance to staff on how to interpret, or how to apply.
I slapped my hand, so I have to rescind my motion. Darn it. But it's in the air. Well, then you make a motion.
Josh and
I rescinded my.
All right, then I would make a motion to uphold the fine and the 6-month suspension.
We asked a clarifying question of that procedurally. So do we need to have both of those in the motion since he's only disputing the suspension versus the fine?
No, our action is.
Our action
Both.
is, we don't have the ability to apply one or the other. The city council in the ordinance has set out that for this type of an infraction, these two penalties are married.
Correct.
So,
But even though one of those is not in dispute.
right,
No.
it doesn't, that's
You can appeal
a
them
moot
both.
point, yeah. The appeal is on,
He didn't, not in his paperwork.
well, but I guess it's a moot point in he's appealing the penalty, and the penalty is both of them.
Gotcha. Okay. With that clarification, I'll second the motion.
All right. Board Secretary, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Vanessa,
Aye.
Board Member Parker,
Aye.
Board Member King,
Aye.
Chair Sinclair.
Aye,
Motion carries 4-0 to adopt the resolution upholding the administrative decision.
thank you for your time, Mr. Epstein, and the staff will work with you on the dates. So this concludes that hearing. Let's move on to the next hearing, which is item 7. Concerning the property at 290 West San Carlos Road, which is an appeal of the ineligibility for vacation rental certificate to operate a vacation rental at this location. Board Secretary, please ensure the city staff and the appellant understand that their testimony is under oath.
We do have signed affidavits from city staff and the appellant is in person. Anyone on Zoom who desires to testify under this appeal hearing, under laws of perjury, if you choose to speak, you hereby accept and acknowledge that your testimony shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mr. Clifford, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, board members, city staff, public joining the call, and in attendance this evening. My name is Patrick Clifford with the Department of Special Program Compliance, and we oversee the vacation rental program here in the city of Palm Springs. The item before you this evening is different from what the board is usually accustomed to with respect to cases, as we've heard cases from unregistered rentals or violations of other parts of the municipal code with respect to suspension and contract summaries. The item before here is specific to a denial of a vacation rental certificate, specifically during the renewal process. Vacation rental certificates are required to be applied for each year. They have a specific expiration date. And you'll hear your staff usually refer this to as a renewal when the new application comes in. They do expire, but then we consider it as a renewal continuing on from their first certificate. Staff reviews completely the application, property owner information, and other information that could be related to, such as LLC documents or trust documents. With this staff report, I'll give a background on why the vacation rentals were initially issued and why you notice two properties being mentioned, specifically 250 San Carlos and 290 San Carlos. Changes with respect to the ordinance from City Council and what was adopted in the fall of 2022, and why specifically a denial is now occurring with respect to one of the properties. During this presentation, you may notice I'll read a lot of the staff report verbatim. There's a lot of information and aspects I just want to make sure that I clearly present to the board with respect to the staff reports, and that way it's fairly representative from what the city has found and why the denial of the application or the vacation rental certificate occurred. So just some background, and there's a good background in your staff report. On February 9th, 2022, Italian Leibowitz was issued a vacation rental registration certificate number 4928 for the property located at 290 West San Carlos Road, Palm Springs, under the LLC 290 West San Carlos LLC. Additionally, on July 7th, 2022, a vacation rental registration certificate number 4942 was issued to the spouse of Italian Leibowitz, Dan Aharon, for the property located at 250 West San Carlos Road, Palm Springs, under the LLC Sunny Luxury VAs. At the time of the registration as well for the property located at 290 West San Carlos and 250 West San Carlos, Vacation Rental Ordinance 1918 was in effect. And the language under that Palm Springs Municipal Code 5.25040 stated at the time, a natural person, limited liability company, or personal or family trust shall not maintain any financial interest in more than one vacation rental. And for this purpose, financial interest includes both legal and beneficial ownership, as well as any arrangement that provides for the receipt of any portion of the revenues generated by the vacation rental. An owner shall be issued and can only maintain one vacation rental registration certificate at any time. Initial conversations between the Department of Special Program Compliance and staff and Dan Aharon in March 2022 related to the application for a vacation rental certificate for the property located at 250 West San Carlos Road, which that conversation resulted in advising the applicant, Dan Aharon, that they could not apply because the applicant's spouse, Italian Leibowitz, who was on the deed of trust for the property 250 West San Carlos, demonstrated a beneficial interest. Italian Leibowitz additionally already had a vacation rental certificate for the property located at 290 West San Carlos, Palm Springs. The applicant at that time, Dan Aharon, requested the application be reviewed further for acceptance. Conversation between Dan Aharon and city staff continued into April 2022. And the applicant followed up with staff and clarified that Dan Aharon had no ownership or relationship with the LLC that owns 290 West San Carlos Road, the 290 West San Carlos LLC. Any income that was generated from the property located at 290 West San Carlos Road is transferred to bank accounts in the LLC's name or to Italian's bank account, and Dan had no access to either of those. Italian Leibowitz had no ownership in the property at 250 West San Carlos Road, or the LLC that owns that property, which is Sunny Luxury VAs LLC, and would have no access to the income generated from it. That is provided as attachment 4 in your staff report. And at that time, it was the applicant's understanding that the information provided demonstrated compliance with the requirements for a short-term rental and from the points listed below, that there was no legal ownership of 290 West San Carlos Road or 290 West San Carlos LLC from Dan Heron. No financial interest, since any income associated with 290 West San Carlos LLC went to the account that Dan Heron had no access to. And after receiving feedback from the city attorney, on page here, so, and that no arrangement that provides for receipt of any portion of the revenues generated by the vacation rental at 290 West San Carlos Road was received by Dan Heron. The conversation further continued into May 2022 with staff relating to community property tax laws, community property laws. The applicant had consulted with legal counsel and signed a transmutation agreement, which is in attachment 5 of your staff report, which clarified each house, 290 West San Carlos Road and 250 West San Carlos Road, were separate properties, and Dan Heron and Atai Leibowitz have no beneficial interest in each other's properties. And in addition, the applicant explained to the council that beneficial interest required having a right to income from a trust or business. Since there was no right to that income, it goes to an LLC and the bank account that the other has no access to. Therefore, no beneficial interest is in each other's property. Staff relayed this information provided by the applicant to the city attorney's office for further review in June of 2022. And from the city attorney's office, it was found that Dana Heron and Atai Leibowitz had gone to such lengths to disassociate their interests by way of separate LLCs, which at the time held properties separately and entered into a transmutation agreement, which established the properties as their sole and separate properties. A beneficial interest in land is reasonably interpreted to be a current economic interest. A future interest in land based on the death of a spouse is not a beneficial interest. Not only is the interest contingent upon a future act, death of spouse, there is no certainty that the beneficial interest will ever occur. The fact that two individuals are married was not determinative based on the readings of the regulations. It comes down to whether an individual maintains a financial interest in more than one vacation rental property. Spouses may have prenuptial or postnuptial agreements in place. They might use money that is not considered community property to purchase the rental property. And they may have married in a state that does not recognize community property at all. After receiving the feedback from the city attorney, city staff issued vacation rental registration certificate 4942 for the property located at 250 West San Carlos Road, Palm Springs. And that was in July of 2022. At the October 17th, 2022 city council meeting, the council directed city staff and city attorney to bring back an ordinance for consideration that addressed certain issues, one of them being further defining incidental use of residences. And at the November 10th, 2022, staff presented a staff report for issues raised at the October 17th, 2022 city council meeting, which is attachment 6. The staff report dated November 10th, 2022 presented incidental uses of residence. A quote from the staff report: "One of the primary issues involved in the city's regulation of vacation rentals is the concept that vacation rentals of residential properties is and should be considered an incidental use of that residence. Specifically, the city's current vacation rental ordinance provides that a person cannot maintain any financial interest in more than one vacation rental property. For this purpose, the city's current ordinance provides that a financial interest includes both legal and beneficial ownership, as well as any arrangement that provides for receipt of any portion of the revenues generated by that vacation rental. The city has received at least one request by a married couple to allow 2 residential properties to be registered as vacation rentals." End quote. In the city staff's opinion, the ownership and operation of 2 residential properties by a married couple or a couple in a domestic partnership is inconsistent with the concept of incidental use of that residence. As such, the proposed ordinance clarifies the rule prohibiting any financial interest in more than one vacation rental by declaring that a person will be deemed to have a financial interest in a vacation rental that is owned by his or her spouse or registered domestic partner, regardless of any pre or post-nuptial agreements to the contrary. At the city council meeting on November 28, 2022, city council discussed scenarios relating to the incidental use. And specifically Exhibit 1, which I have listed in the staff report, offers video footage of the city council's conversation. And I have asked the city clerk to pull up that council meeting, and so we can listen to the conversation that occurred during that meeting. It's just important to note that the conversations between the city attorney and the city council, you can clearly understand that there is concern regarding incidental use of vacation rental in the city of Palm Springs, and that the general concept and the intent of the proposed ordinance at that time was to maintain that vacation rentals properties are maintained as incidental use and should be only maintained to have one vacation rental at a time by an owner. City clerk, if we can pull up that video, and then we can do that.
So that's for you to make clear.
But there's nobody else there.
Nope, just us.
Okay, we're gonna continue the hearing, the Zoom. There are no other people on Zoom and no one else will be allowed in. And we have the appellant here and the board and the council and the city. So I think we're safe with going ahead with the appeal. Patrick, if you want to speak shortly to the intent, I don't know what kind of objection there would be to that, but just go ahead and we'll go from there. I have things I want to say later.
Yes, of course. Thank you again, Chair. I believe we still can't pull up the video. Is that correct? City Clerk?
2005-1 Public Safety Services.
That starts at minute 58:43.
That's at 58:46.
November 28th,
Yeah.
2023.
So that's,
That might be a different one because the link that, will you be able to view the link when
I did, but didn't come up with stuff.
there's Jeff right there.
So is it gonna be that part? Oh,
What's that?
it's gonna be an.
5 words, you pronounce wrong.
I can pull it up on my computer. I can to the dongle.
Thank you so much for your. 5 words, you pronounce wrong.
Is that on the YouTube? That's probably the clip that I showed you my phone on. That might be why we're getting so much.
Yeah.
You want me to?
Yeah, if you can give me like any one.
Yeah. I'm gonna, if you want, I'll send you the link. That's it. Let me send you the link.
Very aware and made in the staff report and wants to include before you. Specifically, after the discussion about medical programs or contracts to be allowed for the new communities for existing communities after January 2026. The staff report and agenda references that going forward and in fact. So I think the companies we would correct that and make it 26 and not 24. In addition, that date for brand following and brand currently.
I just sent you the link to the video. It's not on there. It might be another one.
In addition, there were a few paragraphs in section 5.25.070 that are really different from the previous ones. I think it was intended to do that as well. And then there was reference to the agenda to half of 36 when
It's only one, but I think the video clip that I have has it as a different minutes, as I go on right here.
32 pages plus 3 more paragraphs in the report that was arranged and presented to the city council at that meeting. And there'll be the video indicates that. And then I think if there was a question, I think you remember probably between regarding granting of existing permits. I believe it's a big condition that at the annual renewal period for any existing permit holders, they would have to be in compliance with this ordinance that has been adopted. Irrespective of whether they make the ordinance.
Yeah, if you want to play that.
Presentation again.
It's kind of gonna flow right into where he just left off anyways, and it's just a better link. It was November 28th. And that should be 58, the minute 58:42.
Oh, I think you're on, you have to put the volume on, there you go.
There you go.
Is that echo because of the Zoom?
Could be from the speaker.
I think it's from the speaker.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Cassandra.
We received evening. In a situation, legal. What we would be doing is legal and from the while the single and continue.
Yeah, see if you guys, I think what we did is say, moving forward, given that they can, if there are not willing to get out, which you know, we do, so I change this, and maybe even the other thinking of a different situation, that the situation that arose was last, I believe they were married when they bought the second property. And staff and our office believe that is inconsistent with the ordinance's general theme, which is that these are really ancillary uses that may not be two properties, again, that just seemed inconsistent with the and so, and I just think that position would be that if those two individuals the property as single people and then married, they would have to come up with this ordinance the next annual. At least under the law, there's a
It can be to be clear, is
Agreed completely. One individual. Someone say. Take it, you know, that cannot be fair. The second permit, that did not be. A lot of things people can do and the situation now, two individuals. Living on, not alone, each coming to the station and they will have to meet together and ultimately includes the different thoughts in the room as to whether or not they can. And open to women, open to seek it to be full. So also, and clearly, if it's two individuals that we're not together when the bosses aren't ready to the very different. We've never really had an argument together, one that they bought before. So let's say we have testimony today that they're going to get divorced, so they could do this, and then figure out they could do the divorce, and then you get them and that's what that is what that is, and that's so I'm gonna kind of get into the really trying to figure that out. I think that's pretty easy. Ridiculous is fine, but you know, you do it right before you get married, and you have communication about your main residence isn't fine. So you have two houses that are being used almost exclusively and not someone who is that's what I think. I think it's cool. It's more like time. It is something. It is something that's you know, that two individuals may have purchased their tree properties while single individuals will become a regular. I can see some of the this will apply to them. It should be pointed out though, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to sell one or all that. It simply means that they can only build a vacation rental program for one of the two houses. They can continue to own those properties, they can continue to reside in those properties, and they can do longer term rentals. It's just that they really allow vacation. And again, the rationale of that is that it seems inconsistent with the concept that all of those properties can be individuals. Thank you. Staff manager to we are licensed here, separating the meetings, separating and bringing together well, there's what's that? Right, If I understand the scenario that I just is not three people who clearly purchased the property, investigate the with great disdain, anyone coming forward and trying to evade the rules legally.
Clarification of my understanding is the way the ordinance is drafted, if two people, each independently wanted to have a vacation of the permit. Once they're married, they want to relinquish one permit.
Yeah, there's no further discussion, there are nothing different.
Thank you, City Clerk, for providing that video. The reason we wanted to provide that video clip is really just to kind of give the board insight of what the purpose of the updated vacation rental ordinance was with respect to incidental uses, what their vision is, and clearly you can see that there's conversation with respect to the spirit of the ordinance related around ancillary use of the vacation rental. That direction gave us, regardless if it was two individuals that were single, they own vacation rental separately, they became married, or domestic partnerships, that at the time of the renewal, if there was a conflict with the vacation rental ordinance, we would deny the vacation rental certificate. So the city council that evening on November 28th, 2022, adopted ordinance 2075 and amended and reinstated the city's adopted vacation rental ordinance. Specifically, language was amended to and added under Palm Springs Municipal Code 5.25040B to read: a natural person, partnership, limited liability partnership, or limited liability company that does not qualify as a business entity or a personal or family trust shall not maintain any financial interest in more than one vacation rental. And for this purpose, financial interest includes both legal and beneficial ownership, as well as any arrangement that provides the receipt or for receipt of any portion of the revenues generated by the vacation rentals. For purpose of this section, a person shall be deemed to have a financial interest in any vacation rental that is owned by his or her spouse or registered domestic partner, regardless of the terms of any contractual arrangement, such as a transmutation, i.e. pre or post-nuptial agreement. The owner shall only be issued and can only maintain one vacation rental registration certificate at a time. So staff has reviewed the conversations that took place in the background as far as the issuance of the original certificates, the adoption of the ordinance in the fall, November of 2022. So staff has found that the property located at 290 West San Carlos Road, its permit expired on January 31st, 2023. And additionally, the vacation rental registration certificate for the property located at 250 West San Carlos Road expired on June 30th, 2023. And with the ordinance that was adopted, ordinance 2075 on November 28th, staff finds that the vacation rental certificate for the property 290 West San Carlos Road, which is due first for the renewal, is ineligible to be renewed due to the following conflicts with ordinance 2075. First, the natural person partnership limited liability company or LLC company that does not qualify as any business entity or personal or family trust shall not maintain a financial interest in more than one vacation rental. And for purpose of this ordinance, a financial interest includes both legal and beneficial ownership, as well as any arrangement that provides a receipt of any portion of the revenues generated by the vacation rental. And as explained earlier, for purposes of this section of the new ordinance, a person shall be deemed to have financial interest in any vacation rental that is owned by his or her spouse or registered domestic partner, regardless of the terms of any contractual arrangement such as transmutation, i.e. pre or post nuptial agreement. Again, an owner shall only be issued and can only be issued one vacation rental certificate at a time. And while the vacation rental certificate for 290 West San Carlos was issued without any conflict to the ordinance in place on February 9th, 2022, and the vacation rental certificate was issued to 250 West San Carlos Road after being evaluated by the city attorney, staff now finds that after reviewing the newly adopted ordinance, that there is a conflict and is unable to renew the vacation rental certificate for 290 West San Carlos Road in Palm Springs. Additionally, it is found during the renewal that on 11/2/2021, a quitclaim deed states that Dana Heron, a married man, spouse of the grantees hereby remisses and releases and forever quitclaims to Atai Leibowitz, a married man, as a sole and separate property, the property located at 29 West San Carlos Road, Palm Springs. So that's attachment 7. Additionally, in review, a grant deed dated 9/25/2021 states that Sunny Luxury Vias LLC grants Dan Heron, married to Atai Leibowitz, a married couple, community property with rights of survivorship, the real property located at 250 West San Carlos. That's attachment 8. On 9/25/2021, a deed of trust states that the trustor as Dan Heron and Atai Leibowitz, a married couple, as community property with rights of survivorship for the property of 250 West San Carlos Road. That's attachment 9. And on February 7th, 2022, a grant deed states that Dan Heron and Atai Leibowitz granted the real property located at 250 West San Carlos to Sunny Luxury Vias LLC, which is attachment 10. The review of the property specific information that was described above relating to both 290 and 250 West San Carlos show that there is financial and beneficial interest in more than one vacation rental by Atai Leibowitz, and regardless of the transmutation agreement previously provided, there is a conflict with Palm Springs Municipal Code 5.25040B, and staff has denied the vacation rental certificate for the property located at 290 West San Carlos Road, Palm Springs, and that was provided as attachment 11. The appellant has requested that their permit be grandfathered. However, ordinance 2075 does not provide such request. It is important to point out that the use of is grandfathered if it was legal at the time it was established. It should be not grandfathered regardless of extensive measures taken to secure the permanent. Additionally,
could you repeat that? Sorry.
Yes, of course. The appellant has requested that their permit be grandfathered. However, the ordinance 2075 does not provide such request. It is important to point out that a use is grandfathered if it is legal at the time it was established. It should not be grandfathered regardless of an extensive measure taken to take a secure permit. Additionally, we do have staff here, administration staff that was here and did conversate with the appellant Dana Heron back when the original certificates were issued. If there's any questions relating to that matter, that does conclude my staff report for this, and I'm available for any questions as well. Thank you.
Questions?
Got a list.
I know. Can I start? Thank you,
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna go in deep initially. I guess my question maybe to both of you. Sorry, my question to both of you would be. What exactly is this doing in front of us, given it's like edging toward policy, if you will? Like, I need clarity on why. I know I can imagine you're gonna say denials appeal to the board, but there's such a granularity and also some sort of definitions and legal arguments here that I feel as if we're ill-equipped in some capacity to understand and go into something that's almost policy. Does that make sense? Maybe, I don't know if you can answer that.
Yes, I would say that certainly that's understandable. The purpose of the appeal hearing for purposes of the appeals board is to determine whether the denial of the renewal is permitted under the municipal code provisions. What appellant might argue is that the code language does not apply, should not apply. The appeals board's authority in this regard is not to determine whether the policy behind the code is correct, but rather whether, by the language of the code, there was actually a proper denial made in terms of the non-renewal by city staff, or to overturn that based on the language of the code. Does that help?
A little. We'll see. Okay, go right ahead.
Essentially, you should not, the board's jurisdiction is not to determine what should be the policy here, correct? It's not to determine whether, spouses should be allowed to
Right,
own multiple
and I
properties.
guess
Just whether under the language, the denial was made properly or
Right.
not, and that might require you to make certain determinations or interpretations of the language to the extent that it might be ambiguous. But that is your only role in that determination,
Right.
not to make policy.
And so I'm gonna ask that you monitor our conversation such that we don't go into a place we shouldn't, and I think that is likely.
Yes.
Because, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I want to be. So just help us, okay?
I will try, yes.
Okay, I have a few questions. So what I kept hearing in what you were reading in the ordinance was the word family. That the ordinance states that only one permit is allowed per family. And I think it may say some other things, but only one permit per family. And a married couple, for purposes of this, is a family.
Apologies, Vice Chair, if I might have misspoke, it does not say family, it says person.
Okay.
Now, a natural person partnership, limited liability partnership, or limited liability company that does not qualify as a business entity or personal or family trust shall not maintain any financial interest in more than one vacation rental. So apologies if it was referring to the family trust aspect of it.
Maybe that's what I heard.
But it's the other part of the order says an owner shall only be issued and can only maintain one vacation rental registration certificate at a time.
Okay, then, so is there something that says that I guess treats a married couple as one person or one entity, if you will, for purposes of the ordinance?
So yes, which strikes an owner is a natural person, partnership, limited liability partnership, LLP, or limited liability company, LLC, that does not qualify as a business entity or a personal or family trust. So whether that's one natural person, two natural persons can be on a registration certificate. They're more than welcome to have 4 natural persons on a vacation rental certificate, but those 4 people, that's one certificate for them. They cannot obtain another vacation rental certificate in the city of Palm Springs.
Okay, and so then, if I'm interpreting this correctly, the issue is that as a married couple, in a state that is a joint property state, they have an ownership interest in whatever one owns, they both own.
Correct. I think more of the issue is to, with respect, if they were married or they were separated or registered, the fact that there's documents with the county that show that there's financial and beneficial interest in more than one property. With respect to specifically 250 West San Carlos, we see that Itay Leibowitz is on the deed of trust, which is I believe the financial document for the property with Dan Heron. That itself we view as a financial interest, a beneficial interest for the city of Palm Springs. And then at the same time, Itay Leibowitz is on the deed for 290 West San Carlos.
So they're both on 250. One of them is on 290.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Now, next one is, you said a few times this transmutation agreement. I have no idea what that means. Could you define that for me, please?
Yeah, I will try to advise of what that might be. I will refer to the city attorney maybe to have more of a legal understanding of what a transmutation agreement is. Just from a basic understanding from a staff level is that is designed to represent the separate property interests from maybe 2 or more parties, but I would defer to the city attorney to get a little bit more information there.
So as you might know, California is a community property state. And so what a transmutation agreement can be used for example, as it's argued here, is that the transmutation agreement, essentially what it does is it relinquishes that kind of right to that property held by the community and instead designates the property as separate property. And so that's why it's called a transmutation, because you're transmuting the character of the property from community property to separate property, or vice versa.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question to that? Sure, sorry. So if I understand you correctly, the transmutation agreement doesn't change the title of the property. It just changes the community property umbrella, if you will.
Or the ownership interest.
That's correct. So my understanding of the transmutation agreement is that it changes the character of the property with respect to how that property is, whether that property is deemed community or separate property under the laws with respect to, property under the family code, in terms of who owns that property, as a matter of family law.
In the event of.
But you're correct that there may be an instance, and whether that's the case here or not, it's something for the board to determine, in which, you could have a transmutation agreement that, transmutes property from community property to separate property, for purposes of, family law, but, somebody still has their name on the title to the property. So that's correct. It doesn't change that necessarily. It just changes the nature of the property as it's viewed under the family code. If there were to be, for example, a separation or a divorce.
Okay, and then with regards to that, did I hear either the city attorney or yourself or even the city council talk about that a transmutation agreement does not allow for the separation, if you will, of the property from the one or both of the people?
Yes, Vice Chair. So that's really the main concept of the updated ordinance, was including that language into our recent ordinance. So specifically, it says that in any for purposes of this section, a person shall be deemed to have a financial interest in any vacation rental that is owned by his or her spouse or registered domestic partner, regardless of the terms of any contractual arrangement, such as a transmutation, i.e. pre or post-nuptial agreement. So that language was not in the previous ordinance. And then, as you saw in the staff report, we provided the review from the city attorney at that time. that said, that prenuptial agreement did. They went to lengths to separate the properties and they felt that, at least at that time, the ordinance just didn't give us the authority to deny that vacation rental certificate at that time. And then with the update in the vacation rental ordinance, became a little bit more strict with including this language and really kind of still in and out that agreements regardless will be considered still to have a financial interest.
Okay, so, the previous version of the ordinance had verbiage allowing, an entity, whether it's a couple, an individual, an LLC, whatever, only one permit. The updated ordinance added clarification that I have to keep looking at how the transmutation agreement, any other kind of, and I would assume, does that apply to them to a quick claim? It added clarification that those types of arrangements don't kind of separate the people from the property.
Yes, that's correct. And so referring back to the previous ordinance, our staff has been always pretty adamant that you can only own one vacation rental at a time.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but and I guess the meat of my question is, that's why it was denied and not grandfathered. Because it was not a new law, it was just adding clarification, or not new regulation. It was adding clarification to what was there previously in the original ordinance.
Great point. The reason why maybe city council did not go the route of grandfathering, I can't say, but you are correct that they added this language in there to really define more based off of past occurrences with the last ordinance, and really still reiterate that the overall concept and spirit of the vacation rental ordinance is that vacation rental is an ancillary use to one's property, and they feel that having two properties and whether it's dissociated by a transmutation agreement is still not in the general compliance with all of this.
Okay, and then one last question is, so through the renewal process for 290, that one first, how were your office flagged that, oh, wait a minute. I don't know if they were married before, but how is it flagged? To bring this issue, I guess, up?
Well, the one thing is we've always maintained conversation with the property owners prior to that, and I believe on that November 28th, 2023, it was these appellants that provided public comment. I could be wrong, but we've had extensive conversations regarding even leading up to the ordinance, whether this was something that council was going to look to be grandfathered, and because there was an understanding that council was most likely going to go the route to add a more defined ordinance with respect to incidental use. And so we've maintained open conversations with the appellants for both properties, and really we knew that the renewal was coming up. Nothing's changed with respect as far as the title documents with the county, the LLC documents, and then even nothing's changed with respect to even the transmutation agreement. The big change is that now we had a new verbiage in our language in our vacation rental ordinance, that now that back in the previous ordinance, that with the transmutation agreement that the city attorney at that time mentions that they've gone to such great lengths to disassociate their interest by the LLCs, that with that current ordinance, it just would be probably difficult for the city staff to defend that this isn't a financial beneficial interest. And then so once that ordinance was updated, that kind of gave us more clarity and encompassed a little bit more with respect to agreements and stuff, and thus the denial.
There were both yeses, they were both approved, and then in renewal, one was not, that's correct.
So correct, so the first
Gotcha.
property
I
was okay.
I think I got it, I just wanted to make sure that we've got the flow.
Anything else, Michael?
Nothing for me. Yeah.
I think you guys have surfaced everything. I just have a general process question. I don't think it's policy, I think it's process. So I'll ask you. When there are changes to the short-term rental ordinance, is there any sort of communication that goes out to existing short-term owners?
Yeah, and great question. So definitely there is the council meetings that are publicly noticed.
Right.
And then I believe even after adoption, the ordinance takes place usually 30 days after, I believe, too. And then we, trying to believe if we communicated via newsletter, the new changes, I know we did for respect because they did also introduce other aspects of the ordinance with vacation rental caps as well. And so we do communicate that there was an ordinance change, that we definitely communicate publicly that there was council meetings to understand what the new ordinance was adopted. And I believe we did have a lot of public interaction with the ordinance discussions during that time and then up to adoption.
And then this one, in this situation, this was not obviously with all the pages, not the only change to the ordinance. And there was a lot of changes.
Correct. There was a few amendments.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Okay, I'd like to start the appellate hearing. Normally speaking, we give the appellant 10 minutes. I think unless there's objection, we should give the appellant a little more time, given the scope of this and the fact. And then is the attorney going to start?
No, actually, Mr. Leibowitz, and I'll follow up on him.
Because I was going to make a statement if the attorney was going to start. I'll tell you what it is.
I mean, I can, that's fine.
Well, come up a minute and then you can decide. Let me make my statement and then you can decide. And this actually goes to the amount of time you have. It's my thought that, and certainly feel free to alter them. It's my thought that there's no dispute about the facts in this case, the basic facts.
Correct. I believe that's correct.
In a courtroom, we would talk about a motion for summary judgment would be made and somebody would be privy to that motion. What that means is there's no dispute on the facts and somebody wins and you don't have to sit there and talk for 10 hours about the facts. You don't have to have witnesses. So my question now, or my statement would be, I find some of your, I've probably read it 4 times, your attachment with regard to the background and the law that you cite. I find some of them very compelling. And therefore, if you want to recite the facts again, that's fine. But I would much prefer that we have an argument with regard to the legal matters, since that's how I'm going to base my vote in this. I understand the facts. I think we all understand the facts.
I completely agree. I think in staff submission, they did a good job with the chronology. I think they acknowledge the truth of the facts. We don't have any dispute with the history either as to what it is. It's really kind of the legal effect of what those facts are that we're having.
Right, and how they're applied.
Yeah.
And so, and I'll have a couple of questions on the legal side later. Go ahead and state your name. If you still want the appellant himself to testify, that's fine.
I think he wants to, so.
Well, that's
just
fine.
Out of
Sure.
respect for that, because it's important to him.
Yeah, okay.
And so he can, I don't anticipate that I'll have a long presentation, maybe with questions that may go on, so there'll be time for him to do that.
Okay.
My name is Sean Murphy. I represent Itai Leibowitz, who's the appellant here. Before I get into it, there's 2 things I want to address because I think city council and staff were incorrect on each had one area of incorrection. With regard to council, transmutation does absolutely affect title. Because what happens is, and what the record here shows, Mr. Aaron quitclaimed his property to Mr. Leibowitz. Mr. Leibowitz quitclaimed his property to Mr. Aaron. At that time, they were the sole legal owners of those properties. And then the transmutation agreement went into effect, was signed, changing the characterization of the property from community property to separate property. So while the agreement itself doesn't necessarily change title, the process of entering it results in a change of title. Because otherwise you can't have a change in title if both of them are still legal title holders. So it's a 2-step process, essentially. You each convey to the other, and then you sign the transmutation agreement. Vice Chair had talked about clarification, and I think staff indicated, yes, the amendment was a clarification. I strongly disagree with that. A clarification is when there is a word or phrase that's used and it's just not used, it's not being applied or interpreted in the way a city council wants. They added a complete new section, essentially ignoring transmutation agreements. That's not a clarification. That's a substantive amendment that changed people's legal rights. So I would disagree that that's a clarification. So briefly on the issue of transmutation agreements. They were created by the state legislature and put into the family code. They're state law. State law is binding on local agencies. City agencies can't decide, I don't want to follow state law. I don't like it. Imagine if the city of San Diego decided, we don't like the definition of the coastal zone in the Coastal Act. So we're going to adopt an ordinance to change where the coastal zone is, either closer to the water or further inland. Do you think they'd get away with that? Absolutely not. Because state law preempts any attempt by a local agency to conflict or undermine whatever that state law is. And that's what this ordinance does. And the transmutation agreement is binding on everyone. Once the parties enter into it and they recharacterize the property, it becomes what the property is, separate property of the individuals. The only way that that could ever be disturbed is in a family law proceeding and a court making a determination that that property is community property. Until that happens, it is what it is. That's separate property of the individual parties. Only a judge can disturb that by order or judgment. No one else can. People can argue, well, I don't think you did it right, or I think you used this money for this. Doesn't matter. The transmutation agreement is a binding agreement between the parties, and that agreement is binding on everyone else until a judge says otherwise. The city has no jurisdiction whatsoever to question that, to undermine it, or to ignore it. Now, the staff decision is almost entirely to reject the permit renewal is based entirely on the amendment. Because as we saw in the workup, they accepted that the agreement established separate property interests, that neither had a beneficial or financial interest in the other's property, but it's only because of the language of the ordinance which says we're going to deem spouses to have an interest in the other spouse's property, regardless of any transmutation agreement or prenuptial agreement. So the city's basically saying, we're going to ignore state law because we don't like it, because it allows people to have more permits than we want them to have. City can't do that. They're bound by the law just like all of us are. And it is state law. It's part of the family code. The state legislature deemed them to be effective agreements, allowing people to characterize the ownership of their property. The city has no jurisdiction or authority to undermine that at all. Now, staff recited the deed history, but that deed history predates the transmutation agreement. So it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter how they originally got the property, how they may have conveyed it at certain times amongst each other, because once they quitclaimed it to each other and entered into the transmutation agreement, all of those other deeds become irrelevant. That agreement establishes the properties as their sole and separate property, with no legal or beneficial interest in the other partner's property. So there could be 100 of those deeds, who cares? Because none of it matters. It's all superseded by the transmutation agreement. Now, so that's the first legal problem with the city's ordinance, that they're trying to contradict state law, which they can't do. The second problem is it impairs the party's contract. A transmutation agreement is a valid contract between two people. The city can't just say, we don't like your contract and we're not going to abide by it. We're not going to recognize it. That violates the constitutional provision of impairment of contracts. It's a Fifth Amendment violation, it's a due process violation. The city can't just ignore a party's contract and say, we're not going to follow it, we're not going to recognize it. And that's what they're doing here. They're saying, I don't care if you went about the process properly and legally in accordance with state law and divided your property interests, we're not going to recognize that agreement. It can't do that. The third problem is the ordinance is discriminatory. It is discriminating against married couples. If two brothers, two sisters, a brother, sister, two roommates lived in the same house, they could each get a short-term rental permit, even though they both live in the same house. They could even share the revenue and the income. But married couples cannot. Only married couples have to be prevented. But two strangers, two family members, they can do it. And there's no rational basis for them to make that decision. None whatsoever. Other than we want to keep people from having more than one permit. Well, the transmutation agreement makes certain that two people are not having more than a permit each. That's the purpose of the agreement. Now, and there was some discussion, if they divorced, even if they live in the same house, they can now get two permits. I mean, is that really what we want to encourage? We want to encourage people either not to get married, or if they are married, to get divorced so that they can afford to live, they can afford to maintain their house. That's why discriminatory laws don't last very long. And that's what this is. It's an attempt to discriminate against married couples because single people could get away with it. Now, in terms of the legal arguments, that's really the extent of my comments, because I think the issues are really pretty simple. Take any one of them. Take their attempt to try to subrogate state law, which they can't do. That's pretty straightforward. Try to impair parties' contracts. That's pretty straightforward. You can't do that either. And there'd be arguments on discrimination as to whether there's a rational basis for treating married people different from single people, and that one might be a little bit more complicated. But at the end of the day, we can all see what they're doing here. They're discriminating against married people. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Questions?
I have just two, actually. You mentioned in your testimony that the only way to void a transmutation agreement would be a judge who decides that the property is now in the community property umbrella. I don't know if I said that correctly, but I think that was
close enough.
Okay. Is there a way that a couple can void it themselves?
Oh, of course. It's a negotiated agreement. Yep, it's a negotiated agreement between two people. If they want to amend it, if they want to just say, we don't want this anymore, and we now want to convey it back to ourselves as community property, they could do that.
Okay. May I ask you a general question? Sure. This one is, I, like my colleague here, I had never heard the term before. And I used to be in the mortgage business many years ago, so I felt like I knew everything. I learned something today. But so in general, why do they exist? Why do people utilize them? Transmutation agreements.
Never been divorced before.
Actually, I have.
Well, I mean, there's a number of different reasons. Some of them are financial planning, some of them are tax planning, some of them are, you're either expecting or anticipating a divorce. Sometimes it might be in connection with a prenuptial agreement so that it's clear going into going forward in the relationship, whoever owned the property, or they're separating it for different reasons. Maybe they're acquiring a big piece of property that's going to be their community estate, and they want to separate the interests in some other smaller properties. So, yeah, I mean, there's a number of different reasons which usually come into play. Either family planning or financial planning are usually the basis for them most of the time.
Thank you.
Michael, questions?
I do have a couple of questions. So you said that a transmutation agreement absolutely changes the title. Is that what, did I hear that correctly?
The agreement itself does not necessarily, the process does. So as happened here, there was an exchange of quitclaim deeds so that each was removed from the other's property as a legal owner. That by itself would not change the character of the property. The transmutation agreement then changes the character of the property. So it's part of a process. And the transmutation is really designed to recognize the change in characterization, but it has to be done with deeds exchanged, because if someone's still a legal owner on title, then they still have an interest in that property.
And I guess that's the purpose of that question. Is, are the titles now updated where they no longer have interest in the other's property?
Yes.
They are, okay. So there's a lot of information in here, I think, from the appellants and yourself about how neither gets any financial benefit from the other's rental. And I'm a little confused as to how that's possible for a couple.
Because it's LLCs.
But I guess, and let me put it really bluntly.
No, I understand your point. So here's the thing. What the ordinance is talking about is a quote beneficial interest. A beneficial interest has a legal definition. Been established for centuries. It is a legal right to the benefit of the property. It might be revenue, or it might be possession, or some other type of benefit that you might get. But it's a benefit that's recognized in law, so that if you don't get it, you could go into a court and say, I'm not getting my rent, I'm not getting my revenue, I'm not getting my possession. They don't have that right. By virtue of the transmutation agreement, they've given up all beneficial interest in the other's property. And they've even gone steps further to make sure that money from this property goes in this LLC, which then goes into this bank account, which this person doesn't have any signatory interest or right to receive any of the money. Is there some sort of incidental benefit, like they go out to dinner and somebody buys dinner and some of the money might be from, a rental? I suppose that's possible, but that doesn't create a beneficial interest because there's no legal right to that. You've got to have a legal right to the benefit for it to be a beneficial interest. I mean, it's no different than two roommates that go out.
So if I understand what you're saying, a beneficial interest is not actually created by benefiting. It is a legal, what's the word I want? It is
entitlement, a legal entitlement.
I guess, yeah, at the point of divorce or sale of the property or something like that. So if the money from this property goes into this account, this property goes into this account, excuse me. And theoretically, they each, have that money and they use that money to whatever, go on a trip, pay for dinner, whatever, like you had said, that's not a beneficial relationship?
No, it's not a beneficial interest as that term is used in law and is used in the ordinance. It's a difference between benefiting, casually benefiting from, casually is not the right word. I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of. Because the benefit has to be legally required.
Okay, so it's the word required, I think, is the key word there.
Because that's what a beneficial interest is. You have a right to a benefit in that property or from that property. And most frequently it's rent, revenue, or possession.
So, and just so I understand as a non-attorney, one of them could take the money from their rental, go do something crazy with it, and the other one has absolutely no recourse.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I understand that. Okay, then my last question, I think, is a little bit more intense and direct. Was this transmutation agreement done for the purpose of being able to have two permits?
I believe so. I don't know for certain.
So isn't that them trying to get around the ordinance?
Yeah, but people do that all the time.
That doesn't make
People have LLCs because, you know, they're allowed to do it, or when, you know, when the city prohibits a certain form of ownership, then they use a different form of ownership. I mean, just because you are taking legal actions so that you can qualify, doesn't mean you're doing anything improper. I mean, that's what people do. What are the rules? How can I qualify for this? Oh, this is how I can qualify for this. I'm gonna do it this way. There's nothing illegal or improper about that.
Okay,
Well,
what I'm struggling with is, it sounds like from what you're describing, that arrangement was set up solely to get around the city's regulation of one permit. And that sounds to me like it is intended to violate the spirit of the ordinance.
You know, we talk about spirit and intent, but you know what? Spirit and intent are most often irrelevant. Intent only comes in if the statute's ambiguous. And there's nothing ambiguous about this. The ordinance is ignoring state law by ignoring transmutation agreements. There's no ambiguity there. We don't need legislative intent. We don't need to hear why someone adopted. It doesn't matter why they adopted it, because the only thing that we govern ourselves by is what does it say? Now, if we can't understand what it says, then maybe we go to those comments. Well, what did they mean? We don't have to do that here. We know what it says. There's nothing confusing about it. We don't need intent. And spirit, that's a pretty slippery slope. Who decides that? Who decides that? The mayor who doesn't like the idea that people might get more than one permit in a household? She gets to decide what the spirit is? I don't think so. The language is what the language is. That's what we enforce, and that's what we look at.
Are you done?
I am done.
Jocelyn?
She's already had her.
Well, I have comments, but I'm gonna wait
Yeah,
until
we'll
we
wait
get
till
to the plan.
it's our turn.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Counselor.
Thank you.
Mr. Leibowitz, I understand you'd like to make a statement or two?
I'll make a short statement if it's okay with you.
Sure.
Of course.
Chair Sinclair, Vice Chair Vanessa, members of the board, city staff, and members of the public present. My name is Itai Leibowitz. I own the home at 290 West Central Road. I'm going to make a short statement. First, I'd just like to thank you for being here. I think maybe other cities might make decisions like this without having anyone to talk to. And I'm glad that Palm Springs provides at least this opportunity for discussion. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time and effort to go through this pretty confusing discussion. This case might sound complicated, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to one simple fact. I have no beneficial or legal or any financial interest in my husband Dan's phone. I've never had any, I had it, but then like we separated it when we applied for vacation rental permits, and the city staff and the city attorney already confirmed this. Our properties were completely separate, and thereby they approved both of our permits. The city's decision recently to deny it is based on the same exact documentation that when they first approved it. Nothing has changed in our financial situation. And you heard from my legal counsel from Sean about how about all the legal matters here. I think I'll just keep it short. I'll just mention a personal note here. This thing has been haunting my sleep for over a year now. To watch all of this discussions happen kind of above our head and without our participation. I invested a lot of money into my home, into renovating it based on the laws that they were at the time.
that allowed me to get my own separate permit. I was relying on the ability to rent it part-time to be able to afford the costs. I continued to invest after I got the permit and things like sending it up for guests and things like hiring a private security company to make sure that guests uphold the sound ordinances and the parking ordinances. This arbitrary decision to deny my permit stands to wipe away the significant majority of my life savings and sever the dream of retirement in Palm Springs. Unlike many other cases that you hear here, I always follow the laws. We both always follow the laws. And to decide that to deny me the permit just because I'm married feels like undue punishment. On a good note, I will say that owning this home in Palm Springs has been a dream come true. It is a beautiful property. I love having the ability to imagine retiring here. Imagine many celebrations with hosting family members for birthdays and holidays and stuff like that. In the short time that I've had the permit, that's the guests that have come. That's what they've done. They've had multi-generational families come together to celebrate their grandfather's 70th birthday, and they have, in reviews, kind of noted like the amazement, the beauty and love of this place. I think Palm Springs is such a special and magical place. It is. The fact that we are all here and having this discussion, I think, is a special privilege. And I think you have a magic wand, not to go and fix the council's laws necessarily. All you have to do is reverse this one decision and it can go back to council. And that will tilt my future in the direction of more beauty and love in Palm Springs. And I hope you choose to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just have one, sorry. Based on all of the legalese that's been thrown at us, I just want to hear from you. Were you guys married? Or let me ask this a different way. Did you buy the properties before you were married, or was it after?
Yeah, let me clarify. Dan and I have been together for 20 years and we've been married for over 15 years. We bought the properties while we were married, and the city knew all of this when we applied for the permits. When we applied for the permits, the properties were owned separately through the quitclaim deeds and through the transmutation agreements. So we never had any kind of joint ownership of them as vacation rental properties.
Okay, and then if you wouldn't mind, I want to ask you the same question I asked your attorney. Was that done to get around the ordinance?
I heard the question. It was not done to get around the ordinance. It was done to follow the ordinance. Because, I mean, I can tell you the story of how we came to own 2 homes. That was never the plan. That was part of the decision to buy a second home, was because I knew that I would be able to rent it, because I would own 1 home and Dan would own 1 home. And that's what the ordinance allowed at the time. A single natural person, a single person can have 1 permit. And, you know, it had nothing to do with marriage or to do with financial interest. And we wanted to make sure that we were very clear with the ordinance. We do not have any financial interest. And so maybe to separate our bank accounts wasn't enough. Maybe to do the quitclaim deed wasn't enough. Definitely the transmutation agreement made it legal and binding that none of us have any legal right to the other's home or any revenues from that house.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate your testimony.
I just,
Oh, sorry.
that's okay. I just have one question. You saw us watching the video of the city council meeting where this was adopted and, or maybe it was a precursor to the adoption. I don't know if I had that correctly. Were you guys in attendance at that meeting?
We were watching.
To give public comment? Okay.
Oh, well, Dan gave public comment.
Okay.
I wasn't able to give public comment at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it's okay to add, you may have seen that the discussion was kind of going in various different directions, not necessarily about our case. It wasn't clear about if this was a case of 2 people separately coming together and whatever. And we never got the chance actually to speak in that discussion after all that and to clarify anything. So this is the first time that anybody's actually listened in this case. So.
Thank you. Does the city have anything else?
Nothing to really add to the material that's been presented to you. I just wanted to clarify maybe a couple processes, with respect to, we talked a lot about like the spirit of the ordinance as well. The findings of the ordinance does state that the ordinance confirms that vacation rentals and home sharing are allowed only as ancillary and secondary use. So yes, we do say spirit, but it's actually confirmed in text in the ordinance too, that it should be ancillary and secondary use. And with respect to our department as far as processing, by no means are we aiming to discriminate towards married couples or domestic partnerships. It's just simply looking at the financial and beneficial interests. But we heard that if there were brothers and sisters living in the same house or friends and together that live in one same house, it might be a part where all four individually live in one house and all four may individually own one vacation rental. We won't see that because we just don't have any evidence of financial interest. But if a brother and sister, which we've had occurrence for, apply for a loan to get a house or are entitled together, brother and sister, we would deem them financial beneficial interest, and we would not allow them to get a second vacation too. So, but we do overlook this in other situations too, relating to financial interests.
Thank you. Council, any other comments?
Well, the whole idea about.
I think you have to be up here.
It's not universally applied. I could live in Orange County and own a house here as a second use. It's never going to be an auxiliary use because I don't live there. I just rent it. It's the primary use. There's no enforcement against that, nor could there. It'd be unconstitutional. But so, the idea that someone has to live in the house, be a resident, that's not part of the ordinance. Again, it wouldn't be legal either. But so, the idea that it's intended to be ancillary means it is when we say it is. Because there's so many uses where it's not. I mean, we had somebody up here, Mr. Ephraim, I think his name was. He doesn't live here. He lives someplace else and he has a property here. That's not ancillary. The rental is primary. So I just don't think that that's really a valid argument, nor is being on a deed of trust. Being on a deed of trust makes you an obligor. You are a debtor. That's not having a financial interest. That's being a debtor. A financial interest is when you actually get money from the property. Someone who has to pay a mortgage doesn't have a financial interest. They're a debtor. That's all they are. That's it.
Thank you all. Okay, who wants to start? I can start if you want.
Yeah. Wow. So there's a couple of things that are like. What? Oh, sorry. Thank you. A couple of things that are really kind of churning for me. I guess I would agree with the point that ancillary use is very subjective. That has never been something that's been able to be quantified. I guess it's hard. I mean, both sides have very logical arguments, and go ahead.
Can I just speak to the awkwardness in terms of the board, as an appeals board, given a certain authority by the city council, to be put in this position? I guess the question I would have is, what happens whether we do one thing or the other? Can you tell me, if we uphold, what happens? If we deny, what happens? Or whatever.
I don't think it matters.
I do think it
Are
matters.
you asking if do we set a precedent? that
What
becomes
does this,
binding?
he mentioned it goes back to council, does it go back? Like, I don't understand.
No, it would not go back to council. Well, the decision that you make on this appeal is only going to be effective as against these appellants and this case, right? Moving forward, staff could continue to interpret the ordinance as staff interprets it. Staff has their own legal counsel, as you know, that advises them on how they can interpret the ordinance. And it would not automatically go back to city council. Certainly, city council, in light of the administrative appeals board action, could decide to take further action or, do whatever it does. But no, the only consequence of your vote is that it will settle this discrete appeal, and you might see it again in the future. You might not. Staff can continue to do what they do, and city council is free to, make rules and regulations as they see fit. This doesn't create any sort of binding precedent that the city staff must follow or anything like that.
Let me ask a question if I may, Patrick. The date of this passage of this ordinance was November 28th. So it went into effect 30 days after that.
Yeah, that's correct.
So it was before the first of this year.
Correct.
So it's now in effect. So we have basically 3 months for this to happen again, correct? Because any permit, that maybe not be true, I was gonna say,
That's right, because they're issued for a year.
they're issued for years, so
They're renewed.
it's highly unlikely that we're gonna see this situation again. Because we only have 3 months left of the year, and there's no permit denial pending other than this one.
Correct, we do have with respect to the other property, that's related in the staff report, so 250, West San Carlos, that's, I don't believe we've issued a denial, for their certificate yet. We've worked on this case first, and so, whether the second property will come back to the board or not, is still, there hasn't been a denial that was sent to set an appeal process yet, so no time frame that I understand that when the next one.
Would it be though, if the 290 was denied, then that means that 250 doesn't have a second permit?
With respect to that case, since these both are related here, I don't think we are going to probably, there'd be more conversation with our city attorney, but like, how do we approach this now? But we've already related both properties in this appeal. It would probably make no sense to come back to the appeal board and really reiterate everything that we just talked about today in the staff report, because pretty much it's gonna be the same language, and maybe vice versa, some concept as far as owners, but most likely we would be like, okay, since this transmutation agreement.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, because that matter is not before you, I would advise you don't discuss it with the board, it's just so there's no, theoretically, it's possible that city staff would not bring it back, but because you don't know whether that will actually happen or not, it's best for the board to not discuss it, just consider the matter before you now, which is whether the renewal for this property was properly denied or not.
So, I guess one more comment I have for our discussion is, and what is giving me pause, in trying to figure out my view on this, is our role is never to decide if we agree with constitutionality of the laws or regulations the city council sets.
That's what I said at the beginning.
Yeah, that's not our role. Our role is to say, based on what the city council has set as rules and laws, is there a violation? Whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant. And I think that's, we have to keep that in mind as we're coming to a conclusion for what each of us believes.
David?
I really don't have any other comments other than, you just said it, and I think Abe, you said it when we first started. Was there a violation based on the current code? Yeah, I don't have any comment. It's like.
Well, and maybe, what you were wanting to say and didn't, and I don't want to put words in your mouth.
That's what I wanted to say.
But, again, our purpose is not to decide constitutionality, appropriateness, any of those things. Based on the ordinance that the city council with city attorney wrote, does this does this kind of violate that regardless?
Why can't we take into account constitutionality? If the council passed an ordinance that said there are no guns allowed in the city and abortions are completely illegal, and it comes to us, couldn't we look at the constitutionality of that?
We're a cog in the administrative,
Our role is not to
it
legislate.
is
Their
absolutely not.
role is.
That's where I was going when I said, we don't like policy, and we're so on the verge by doing anything but the obvious thing. Because like legally, I guess, and certainly politically, we are just part of the system. They're arguing the system, and we can't, we're just not, we could, but we would get in some trouble for it. This is important.
Chair Sinclair, I would just clarify that the board certainly has authority where, as I said, the board is tasked with interpreting the language of the code or the effect of language in the code for, purposes of a denial or a violation. You certainly have authority to determine whether the language necessitates a certain outcome or a certain interpretation of the language as it applies to a case would, lead to, for example, an unconstitutional deprivation of a property right. Or, there is a different interpretation that it would not. And so you certainly do have some authority to consider those issues. So I want to just, I think it should be clear for the record that you do have authority to consider that to some extent. What I meant when I made my comments earlier was, as Vice Chair said, is that the code is pretty clear that the role of the appeals board is to consider whether, there was a proper finding or not. For example, here, whether the renewal was valid or not to decide whether, the policy should be different. So I understand why that's a little bit nuanced, but certainly if you have any legal questions as to, the legal arguments made, and whether, one interpretation of the code would be valid or not, or whether, certain, facts, as presented necessitate, a view, for example, whether there's a financial interest or not. Certainly, if you have questions as to, the legal, not only the legal basis, but also, the reading of the statute, you're free to ask those, and I'm certainly here to advise you the best I can on those issues if you need further clarification to make your decision.
That's why I found that the legal argument's compelling, and that the transmutation, I agree with counsel, and therefore I think that, I'm going the opposite way. It seems it's some of my fellow board members are going, but I think that's very compelling, and you just can't ignore legal arguments.
I don't know that I would say we're ignoring a legal argument.
Well,
I
yeah.
think what we're saying is the argument is compelling. I'll speak only for myself. The argument is compelling. But what I see is that, if that argument is compelling, is valid, even if it's true, very basic, that's the role, the city council has to fix that.
Or
We
they
don't
can
fix
go,
that.
or they can go to Superior Court.
Absolutely, and they would get remedy for their case.
Right.
I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if that were the case, if that gives a remedy, going forward. That's not for our concern. The argument is absolutely compelling, but our role is to say, based on the ordinance and the language in the ordinance, whether we agree with it or not, did the city follow the ordinance as it's written and do what they were supposed to do? I'm not gonna say they did the right thing, because that's a subjective judgment. Did they do what they were supposed to do? I'm sorry, you know what? This is our time. Thank you, though. Sorry.
Chair Sinclair, I would just remind the board, if you do have questions, as to, what arguments, you can weigh and what other considerations you might have, what, you know, what kind of, how strong the bases are that are proposed by not only the appellants, but also by city staff. Certainly, you know, if you need advice or you'd like any advice on any specific, you know, legal claims or bases,
You know, I practiced law for 52 years and not in California, but I can make my own decisions
All right.
on some of these things.
I would like to ask, and since you open the door, is it discriminatory? Is it
Unconstitutional.
unconstitutional? Can you advise?
Yeah, on that specific issue, what I will advise the board is that, so there certainly are, you know, laws that prohibit discrimination, you know, based on marital status. My reading of the law, of the code, as it is now, in terms of what it says is that no person may have, you know, an interest in more than one vacation rental. It doesn't limit it to spouses, it doesn't limit it to friends, it doesn't limit it to you know, any other type of, you know, relationship status. There is a clarification in the law as it relates specifically to spouses. Because that clarification, for the reasons that you have seen today, based on, you know, the fact that there are certain laws that define property and define interests with respect to spouses and their obligations to each other and their rights to property with each other, that there may be instances in which the code could require further clarifications for specific types of relationships. I don't believe that the clarification itself would give, I don't think there's a strong argument that there's a clarification, you know, based on that status would lead to, you know, a successful claim of discrimination. So that's what I'll advise.
And what about the issue of this? I don't know if that's the constitutionality issue, but the issue of saying transmutations are not legitimate in Palm Springs. Is that his claim that that's just patently not legal? What is your comment on that?
So, yeah, so when it comes to state law preemption, courts will find that a local law is preempted by state law when there are essentially for essentially two reasons. The first instance might be, you know, a local law, you know, says something that directly conflicts with state law. You know, state law says you can't, you know, what people can't own bears, right? And the city of Palm Springs says, you know, actually people can own bears. You know, there's a direct conflict between those laws that you know, that local law might be preempted. The other area is a little bit more complicated, and it's where, you know, where it can be said that state law occupies a field to such an extent where the local agency making, you know, a law would kind of indirectly conflict with that area of law, and it's so occupied by state law, or the legislature has, you know, intended to be the only ones to make rules in that area. What I'll say with respect to whether I believe that the state law preemption argument is valid, I will say I'm not convinced by it. The reason for that is because, as you know, as I have stated when I originally gave you information as to the nature of transmutation agreements, and you know, you have the appellant come up, you know, and say the appellant's counsel, you know, has stated their opinion that that transmutation agreements require a process to change title, and I would say that I apologize if I was unclear in that regard, but I agree. What I said during my comments, and I still maintain, is that a transmutation agreement by itself, and it appears that appellant's counsel would agree with that, does not change title. There are other, you know, steps that you can take, for example, to transfer the actual title by, you know, the quitclaim deeds along with the transmutation agreements. But the transmutation agreement itself does not effectuate the title change by itself. And I think that's what I said, and that's what appellant's counsel says, right? And so here, what the city of Palm Springs is saying, transmutation agreements don't affect, for the purposes of this section, for the purposes of determining whether someone has an interest in 2 vacation rentals, transmutation agreements aren't by themselves, like, or any contractual agreement isn't gonna be sufficient to change that determination. There's no state law that says actually transmutation agreements, will result in, an individual not having an interest in 2 vacation rentals. It's targeting, while I understand how, if it were the case that the law said, for example, a deed of trust, will not be deemed to, grant, or a quitclaim deed will not be deemed to grant a legal title to a property. That would directly conflict, but here, what the code is saying is specifically with respect to the determination as to whether there's a financial or beneficial interest, no contractual agreement, and no transmutation agreement will affect that.
But
And what the state law's transmutation agreement section, as appellant's counsel noted, is it affects the characterization of the property with respect to, the rights that the spouses have with each other to that property in dissolution, right? The city's code doesn't purport to affect that in any way. The code doesn't say, actually, if 2 people are divorced, the transmutation agreements won't be valid. That's not what it does. It doesn't conflict with that area of the law. So I don't believe there's a direct conflict, and I don't believe that it's intruding into an area that is preoccupied by state law, because frankly, state law does not, set forth any types of very specific regulations as to, the ownership of vacation rentals and the regulation of vacation rentals in any regard, so.
just for clarification, however, in this particular case, we have quitclaim deeds, correct?
So what I will say in that regard is that you do have a factual, I believe, it seems to me that the board has a factual determination that you need to make as to whether there are other documents, for example, and the order in which those documents were executed and what the totality of those documents means for how they're deemed to, or whether the 2 appellants are deemed to have, or whether the appellant is deemed to have an interest in 2 vacation rentals, right? You can make a factual determination of, here we see not only a transmutation agreement, but we also see other documents that do not create a financial or beneficial interest. You do have that, I do think that you have that factual question before you, and you can certainly make that determination, and I would advise you to consider not only the arguments that appellant made with respect to that, but also the argument that city staff made with respect to that.
Got it. Thank you so much for that. Okay.
I don't want to get into another argument with council,
You don't
but,
need to. He did a good job.
but I'm sort of the opinion that, and something we're not determining here tonight. But I think it'll be determined at some point that staff should have approved it, because the whole thing was void ab initio from the beginning.
What does that mean?
Means from the beginning, from the time it was passed. It was void.
What was void?
The ordinance that didn't allow the second person on it, based on the quitclaim deed. I think we had testimony that the quitclaim deed came before the transmutation.
Correct.
And
correct.
Michael, I would be with you. It's been a long time since I had a property course. I'd never heard that term before, and I practiced a lot of law for a lot of years. So can we have a motion?
Yes.
Who's gonna make it?
You.
Before
I'm not making it.
the motion, I have one follow-up question for you. When you said that, we can look at the legal documents and the order in which they were done or recorded. That, what I'm struggling with is it doesn't change the wording of the ordinance. Which I'm not suggesting necessarily, but when I keep going back to what you said in the beginning, what our role is relative to the wording of the ordinance.
Yeah, let me attempt to clarify what I meant by that. In this instance, the renewal was denied because it was determined that the appellant has a financial or beneficial interest in two vacation rentals, right? What the code says is, when you're making that determination as to spouses, a transmutation agreement is not, won't be sufficient to undermine that determination. However, a board still needs to decide whether there is, at the end of the day, a financial or beneficial interest, not only based on the transmutation agreement, but on the totality of the documents, for example, legal title to the property.
Well, then I'm struggling with the other wording here, which says terms of any contractual arrangement. In a grant deed or a quitclaim deed is a contract, right?
They are contractual agreements, but with respect to the title of property, you need to look at the beginning, the sentence that precedes that clarification, right? So it says that with respect to spouses, any contractual agreement won't be deemed to negate the financial interest. But the initial determination that the appeals board needs to make is that there is, and I'm trying to pull up the exact language, if I can get my computer to wake up from sleep.
So the initial determination is whether there was in the beginning before that came.
Let me pull up the language so I can read it in turn, because I think that'll be helpful. What section 5.25.040B says is a natural person, partnership, limited liability partnership, or limited liability company that does not qualify as a business entity or personal family test shall not maintain any financial interest in more than one vacation rental. For this purpose, financial interest includes both legal ownership and beneficial ownership, as well as any arrangement that provides for receipt of any portion of the revenues generated by the vacation rental. That's the prohibition, right? The prohibition in the code is no person can maintain a financial interest in more than one vacation rental. The board has to determine whether that was violated or not. Certainly, the clarification that for purposes of this section, a person shall be deemed to have a financial interest in any vacation rental that is owned by his or her spouse, regardless of the terms of any contractual agreement, such as transmutation, pre or post-nuptial agreement. That goes to that will inform your determination as it affects that, but you still need to make the initial determination that the denial is based on, which is that
the first
that there is a financial interest in more than one vacation rental.
Okay. That clarifies.
So in that regard, you can consider the totality of the documents, at least in my opinion.
Excellent.
Thanks for
I feel good.
And that may
motion?
be a factual.
So then, you're not making a motion?
I'm not gonna make a motion.
Why?
52 years.
Why?
You know, in his defense, when I was chair, I never made the motion. Ever.
Oh.
Well, that's just your choice.
Yeah.
Choose differently.
Why don't you just make it?
I'll make a motion if you want. My mind just switched based on your last comment, which I'm looking at the first bullet point in the ordinance, which is establishing a financial interest. And I think because the I don't know if I'm using the right term, the quitclaim or the grant deed was done first. That eliminated, in my mind, the financial interest.
So what's the motion?
Sorry, it's late.
I know.
So I move that I don't know the language we're supposed to use. I got in trouble last, she smacked my head.
Me? Can you not read it?
My notes scribble all over,
Oh.
sorry.
Just tell him what he's trying to do.
So I move that we overturn the denial.
Second,
I second that. Sorry. Second.
discussion further.
We have to.
I think we got enough discussion.
Board Member Parker,
Aye.
Board Member King,
Aye.
Vice Chair Panessa,
Aye.
and Chair Sinclair.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0 to adopt resolution overturning the administrative decision.
Stop it then yet.
That's breakfast.
No, we're not done. There's more. Jump out of your seat.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Okay. Approval of the minutes.
I move to approve.
Second.
Second,
Vice Chair Panessa,
Aye.
Board Member Kane,
Aye.
Board Member Parker,
Aye.
Chair Sinclair.
aye.
Motion carries 4-0 to approve the minutes.
Board member comments,
You're skipping 9?
9. I think that's 9, board member comments.
Oh, sorry, I'm the agenda's different.
Yeah, it is different.
Did I miss one?
Oh,
That's
I
the
must have
agenda.
missed putting it on.
Oh,
I must have
No,
missed-
I have it.
Number-
The subcommittee thing?
number 9 is the subject.
Oh, I don't have that.
But we're missing,
I would ask if, or I would make a
Can we
motion to
push it?
push that to next month.
Please.
Okay, second,
To continue,
Yeah, we're
Continue
continuing
till
item
next month.
9.
okay,
okay,
just to
I'm
clarify,
sorry.
the motion would be to continue the item to the next.
What he said.
meeting
Yes.
On
Yeah.
what's the date of the next meeting?
October 25th,
Perfect.
25th, yeah,
and
I'm in Boston.
Please don't.
motion,
Second.
Vice Chair Panessa,
Aye.
Board Member Kane,
Aye.
Board Member Parker,
Aye.
and Chair Sinclair.
Aye,
Motion carries 4-0 to continue item 9 to the next meeting of October 25th.
board member comments,
I have one request. And I don't know if this is possible, but in the city reports that we have, is it possible, I think we used to get where there was big black numbers on the pages, and it was so much easier to reference
Right,
what
or
they
to
were
go to
talking
that
about.
section or attachments. We
Well,
can't
actually,
find,
I would rather not see attachments. I would rather just see like that
Page.
big staff report, but those, you used to do those big black page numbers at the bottom.
Yeah, we used to use the Bates numbering.
Yeah, and it was so, like, he could say on page 50 of the staff report, and we could know exactly where to go instead of. If there was a way to do that again, that would be so great.
Yep, I can make that change effective next.
Thank you.
any other comments? Any comments from you?
From me,
I'm getting old. It's hard to find all stuff.
thank you.
no comments.
Thank you. Clerk's report,
Next meeting is October 25th at 5:30.
Is there any, and we don't have one of these
How many-
again, do we?
how many do we have?
It's at 5:30. We have 5 cases.
Okay. All right, you don't have to have a motion to adjourn, I understand, just
I think
stand
you
up
need a
and.
That's
motion.
right, exactly. You do not have to move.